Chapter 99. What? Are you interested? Sit here and play with me. At this time, Jianghu, who had just finished cutting the beef, walked over. After all, he was the boss, so he didn't need to do the rest of the work. Looking at John's sparkling eyes, Jianghu smiled and patted him on the shoulder. He pointed at the game console next to Jianghu's TV and said to him with a smile. Hearing Jianghu's words, John couldn't help but nod immediately. Looking at him, Jianghu also wanted to play. They moved two small sofas to the TV and started playing. They were playing the NBA 2K series that had just come out this year. This was the first time Jianghu played against others since he bought this game console. In the past, he always played MC mode. It couldn't be helped. Other than him, there was only the old man in the manor. Harriman also couldn't play with him. Bell only knew how to study guns. He didn't like games. If it was Call of Duty, he might be interested. But when Jianghu played that kind of game, he would faint. It was quite a helpless matter. However, compared to Jianghu, John obviously played a lot. Although his hardware wasn't as good as Jianghu's, his skills were much better than Jianghu's. Obviously, Jianghu's reaction and physical fitness weren't outstanding in the game. Not long after, the two of them played half of the game. John used a weak 76ers team, but they defeated Jianghu's Warriors team with a score of 72-46. If nothing unexpected happened, this would be a bloodbath. Looking at the score on the field, Jianghu smiled a little awkwardly. Originally, he always thought that he was a master, but he didn't think that he would be beaten so miserably. However, although it was a little awkward, he didn't care. If John threw the game, he would be angry. His skill was inferior to others, so there was nothing to say. Moreover, in his opinion, this was just a game. Guys, come and help me. However, just as Jianghu was about to continue, he unexpectedly discovered that his savior had arrived. At this time, the door of the villa was opened. Then Mrs. Phillip and John's two girlfriends came in with a lot of things. Jianghu glanced at them and saw that they were all desserts. He didn't have time to play and took the initiative to help. The Americans attached great importance to Christmas, so naturally, they would eat a lot. At Christmas, there were 4 essential foods. The most important one was the turkey. The turkey of the Americans was like the dumplings of the Wuxia people. Of course, this was the northern part of the country. No matter if it was the New Year or any other holiday, they would always cook it. It was the same in the United States. Turkey was the best choice when there was nothing to eat during the New Year and other festivals. In addition to the turkey, there were 3 other things that were indispensable: roast suckling pig, Christmas pudding, and corn porridge. As for the roast suckling pig, Jianghu only bought a small one this year because he didn't eat pig skin. Jianghu didn't really want to eat it. As for the corn porridge, he had already eaten it last night, but he had to eat it again today. As for the Christmas pudding that Mrs. Phillip brought over, there were many other things to eat. The Christmas pudding was also the dessert after the main meal. It was usually made with plums, pudding, minced meat, and so on. Of course, this was only the most basic thing. For Jianghu's house, it was natural to make it the most sumptuous. Therefore, in the Christmas pudding made by Mrs. Phillip, there were apples, walnuts, raisins, soft candies, cherries, lemons, carrots, oranges, pears, and so on. It was very rich. In addition to the pudding, there were many other things to eat, such as cookies, pumpkin cakes, fruit cakes, almond cakes, apple pies, strawberry pies, and tree trunk cakes. This was also a representative food of good luck in the coming year. After Mrs. Phillip and the others arrived, everyone continued to prepare noisily. However, the original core of the preparation had changed from Burke-Dollar and Robbins to Mrs. Phillip. The level of these 2 big bosses was only at the level of being assistants. But now, there were 2 future daughters-in-law, so they didn't need to blindly command them. Perhaps they also felt the festive atmosphere, as Jianghu's 4 pets were also very happy at this time. Xiao Bai had been running around in the crowd. Xiao Huang was usually a little cold, but today, he also squatted at Jianghai's feet and looked at the people in the house curiously. As for Dai, Teeth and Chirp, they would fight whenever they had time. Chirp's current appearance was not much different from when he was first picked up. He was still gray and dirty. However, he was much stronger than before. In the past, he was the one who was beaten up most of the time when he fought with Dai Teeth. Now, he could occasionally fight back. After a lively preparation, the sky turned dark in the blink of an eye, and the dinner officially began. As everyone raised their glasses in front of them, this year's Christmas dinner officially began. "Hey, brother, your place is great." After 30 dishes and 5 flavors of wine, Louis and John, who were still a little reserved, gradually relaxed, especially John, who played a few games with Jianghai in the afternoon. He directly hugged Jianghai's neck and shouted at him loudly. Hearing his words, Jianghai also laughed. "Of course, this is paradise, paradise." Hearing John's words, Jianghai also laughed loudly. Looking at Jianghai hugging his brother's neck and waist, Louis, who still did not understand Jianghai's purpose, took a sip of beer. He was not familiar with Jianghai, but after a day of understanding, he found that this Jianghai really did not seem to have any special purpose. It seemed that he might have been overthinking it. After stuffing himself, Jianghai felt as if he had drunk too much. Although he still maintained his rationality in the end, after tidying up, he went back to his room and fell asleep. This was his first Christmas in this world. When he got up in the morning, he felt a little lonely, but when he fell asleep at night, he did not feel this way. It turned out that people could live well without love. After sleeping until dawn, Jianghai rubbed his head again and sat up in a daze. The first day after Christmas, in fact, was Carnival Night according to the Chinese, to celebrate the success of Jesus' survival. But in fact, in the United States, there was no such thing as Carnival Night, at least not in Jianghai's manner. Some activities might be held in the town, but at least there were none here. When Jianghai got up in the morning, he found that Robbins and the others had already started a new day of work. There was some light snow last night, which could be regarded as a welcome and festive atmosphere. But this light snow had to be cleaned up early in the morning, otherwise it would freeze. In winter, there was nothing happier than a flat road. If the road froze, it would also be the most troublesome. After Jianghai woke up in anger for a while, he got out of bed, washed his face, brushed his teeth, and then helped Robbins and the others clean the snow. Soon after, Philemon came to help, accompanied by his 2 sons. Because they were about the same age, and because they played together yesterday, naturally, when they got together again, there was less vigilance and politeness between them. Louis might have inherited Mrs. Philemon's character. He did not speak much, but he was very organized. John, on the other hand, definitely inherited Philemon's character. This guy was also a chatterbox. Since he saw Jianghai, his mouth had not stopped. Moreover, this guy was very involved in a wide range of things, so he had been talking to Jianghai. From yesterday's game console, they talked about games, from games to basketball, from basketball to ice hockey, and then to rugby. After learning that Jianghai had never watched rugby, he also despised Jianghai. One must know that rugby was now the #1 sport in the United States. Naturally, it was strange that he had never watched it. But unfortunately, his school was a little far from Jianghai's. Otherwise, he would have taken Jianghai to watch a rugby game. According to him, that is a man's game. You will fall in love with it after watching it. Hearing his words, Jianghai just smiled. Whether he would fall in love or not, Jianghai didn't know. But if he had time, it didn't matter if he went to take a look. Thinking about it, he really didn't have a little bit of social activities. It's not a good idea to stay like this all day. He even thought that since he likes basketball, he should go to the nearby Boston Celtics to get a season ticket. At that time, he could go there to watch the game every few days, and he would not have to stay at home all day long. Woof woof, woof woof. Just as Jianghai was there, listening to John Turner's endless words while clearing the snow on the ground, suddenly there was a barking sound. Jianghai looked in the direction of Xiao Bai's barking. He found a car parked in front of Jiang Hai's gate. Jiang Hai did not recognize the car. He had never seen it before. So after talking to Luo Binsi next to him, he temporarily threw the things in the car and walked to the gate. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, the person in the car also saw his figure and jumped out of the car immediately. Huh, it's really cold. I'm sorry, I rashly came to visit without calling. I have no choice. I asked John, and he didn't know your contact information, so I could only come here directly. I hope I didn't disturb you. Just like what Winthrop's mayor, Wallace Kirk, said, the Americans hate visiting without making a phone call. Therefore, the person who jumped out of the car in front of Jiang Hai was a bit reserved. He smiled at Jiang Hai and said, "Thank you for coming." "Oh, fortunately, I'm still here. What can I do for you?" Looking at the man in front of him, Jiang Hai frowned. This man. Speaking of which, Jiang Hai also had some impression of him. Avery and Bradley, who played with him. Today's update is only this chapter. There is still some left, but the editor said that the pace needs to be slowed down. Next week, Sanjiang is very likely to be on the shelves next week. So, to everyone, I'm sorry, I'll release less today and tomorrow. From Monday to Friday, I'll update more often, twice a day. Chapter 100. What do you want to drink? Standing in front of his fridge, Jiang Hai opened the fridge door, looked at the drinks inside, and asked Avery and Bradley, who was sitting on the sofa behind him. If there is juice, if there is no juice, milk or plain water is fine. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Avery and Bradley said with a serious face. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai looked in the fridge. Recently, Jiang Hai has become used to drinking. Whether it is beer or foreign wine, Jiang Hai likes to drink more and more. Suddenly, he is looking forward to the taste of the wine produced by the grapes transformed by his blood. However, although the land at his winery has been transformed, it is not so easy to make wine. Jiang Hai doesn't know much about this, so he will hire a winemaker around the beginning of spring next year. However, although Jiang Hai likes to drink recently, he still likes to drink beverages when he first came, so there is a lot of juice in the fridge. He took out a bottle of orange juice and threw it to Bradley, then Jiang Hai took out a can of Coke. Originally, Jiang Hai didn't like to drink this thing because after drinking it, he would feel uncomfortable in his teeth. But since he came to the United States, he has been drinking it a lot, and he really likes the taste. What's the matter, say it. After opening the can of Coke and taking a sip, Jiang Hai sat in front of Bradley and asked him. The Americans like to get straight to the point, and Jiang Hai wasn't the kind of person whose edges and corners had been ground down by society. He also preferred to do things straightforwardly. It wasn't his style to always drag things out. It's like this: have you ever thought about playing a professional game of basketball? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bradley, who was still thinking about how to cut to the chase, put down the juice in his hand and looked at Jiang Hai with a serious face and said. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, then he looked at his eyes and found that his eyes seemed to be serious. This caught Jiang Hai a little off guard. What is this situation? Play a game? Professional? Sorry, I don't have such plans. If it was a few months ago when Jiang Hai just got the true dragon spirit and someone invited him to play a professional game, he would probably happily agree. After all, playing a professional game, especially in the NBA, has a pretty good income. He can earn at least hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. After deducting taxes, he can still have hundreds of thousands of dollars left. When he has never seen money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, the attraction is not ordinary. He would probably wake up laughing at night. But now, what is the point of playing basketball? For Jiang Hai, he does not have a strong desire to win, and basketball is not his life. He is just an ordinary basketball enthusiast, so in his view, playing basketball is to make money. But does he lack money? As long as he manages his manner well, the money he earns in a year is more than what a top NBA star earns in a lifetime. So when he heard Bradley say that he wants to play a game, he did not care too much. Not interested. Jiang Hai curled his lips and said lightly. I played with you before, so I know how much potential you have. As long as you want, you can even become a top NBA superstar. You can earn tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars a year. You can feel the cheers of the crowd and become a public figure. Don't you want that? Looking at Jiang Hai, Bradley already knew that it would not be easy to convince Jiang Hai. But considering Jiang Hai's talent and strength, he had to calm down and continue to speak to Jiang Hai with a serious face. Well, let's put it this way. First, I don't have a crazy love for playing basketball. I am just an ordinary basketball enthusiast, so I don't have many thoughts about becoming a superstar. Second, an annual income of tens of millions or hundreds of millions is something that can only be achieved after many years of hard work. It's not like I don't watch the NBA. Besides, do you really think that I am short of money? Third, I am a homebody. I don't like the media too much in my life, so I don't like the status of a superstar. So, are you satisfied? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bradley could not help but be speechless. Jiang Hai is 27 years old this year. He is no longer a hot-blooded hothead. Compared to receiving the cheers of tens of thousands of people, he prefers to stay at home, watch TV, and play on the computer. This is also good. Of course, this is under the condition that he is absolutely not short of money. Seeing Jiang Hai's stubborn side, Bradley really did not know what to say this time. Then, have you done a complete physical test? Have you ever thought about how strong you are? After thinking about it, Bradley felt that if he wanted to persuade Jiang Hai with his own mouth, it would be impossible, so he was going to do it in a roundabout way. Since he can't do it, then he will let others have a headache. Huh. I really haven't done this. Hearing Bradley's words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, and then said slowly. Since he had the true dragon soul essence, he just felt that his body should be the limit of human beings, but so far, he has not done a real test to test how strong he is, how fast he is, and how high he can jump. Now Bradley bluntly changed the topic to this, which made Jiang Hai a little concerned. Do you want to try it? Looking at Jiang Hai, Bradley said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. It seems that he has nothing to do in the afternoon, so he will go and have a look. After seeing Jiang Hai nod, Bradley's sad face finally smiled. Then he did not delay and stood up directly and left with Jiang Hai. The two drove one after the other and left the manor. Of course, before leaving, Jiang Hai also had to talk to Robbins and the others. After hearing that Jiang Hai went to the Celtics for training, Lewis Turner and John Turner were also very interested. Lewis Turner was now an assistant coach of the basketball team at Lawrenceville High School in New York. Naturally, he was very interested in basketball. As for John Turner, although his favorite sport was football, it did not prevent him from liking basketball as well. Going to an NBA team's training arena is very tempting for a college student like him. He felt a little excited when he thought about how he could brag about himself when he returned to school. Seeing their expressions, Jiang Hai also chuckled and then brought them along. Although they have only known each other for a day, for Jiang Hai, it is rare to see friends of the same age in the manor. It is natural for him to bring them for a visit. Bradley did not say anything about it because he does not care about people visiting. In fact, every day, except for the closed training, there are always many people going in and out of the Celtics training arena. Some are staff here, some are reporters, some are the team's executives, of course, some are the players' friends and family, and some are diehard fans. The black players, especially those who are not from good backgrounds, have a lot of family members. Although Avery and Bradley is not a player from a bad background, he is also a black man. He has long been used to seeing relatives and friends visiting. When he first went for a trial, there were many more people than this, so he did not say much. He left the manor with Jiang Hai and the others and went to the Celtics training center. For NBA teams, the stadiums were used for their games. During normal training and the team's high-level office, they naturally had their own exclusive training stadiums. Now, they were at the training stadium, a basketball stadium in the suburbs of Boston. However, the security here is stricter than in the competition arena. Even Jiang Hai's car needs to be checked again. After parking the car in the underground parking lot, Bradley took Jiang Hai and the Turner brothers to the elevator and went to the physical test center on the second floor. At this time, there are already people waiting in the physical test center. Jiang Hai glanced at the people standing there. There are a total of 3 people, 2 white people, and 1 yellow person. Among the 2 white people, the older one is estimated to be in his 50s. He has short brown hair and deep wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. There is another white person who is talking to him at this time. He does not look very old, only in his 30s. Next to them, there is a yellow person who is average in height but very muscular. When they saw Jiang Hai and the others coming over, the 3 people stopped talking and turned to look at Jiang Hai and the others. "Mr. Chairman, boss, Mr. Bree, this is the person I told you about, Mr. Jiang Hai." Looking at the 3 people in front of him, Avery and Bradley spoke first. Hearing his words, the 3 people also came over. "Hello, my name is Danny Ainge. I am the current head coach of the Celtics. I hope I can see you in the office in a while." Danny Ainge shook hands with Jiang Hai and said with a smile. After Jiang Hai smiled and nodded, he left first. After he left, the middle-aged white man came over. "Hello, my name is Brad Stevens. I am the current head coach of the Celtics. Now, Mr. Bree will help you with the physical test. I will see you later." After shaking hands with Jiang Hai and briefly introducing himself, he also left. Then, the yellow person came up with a smile and took Jiang Hai into the equipment room. Chapter 101. In basketball, the body was very important, but it was not everything. Otherwise, there would be almost no Caucasians and Asians. Just let those black muscles play on the court. Basketball also had rules. The accuracy of the shot, the reaction on the court, the vision, the tactics, the positioning, and so on were all very important. On the streets of the United States, there were many people with excellent physical fitness, but there were only a few who could enter the NBA. However, even though the body was not everything in basketball, it was the foundation of all basketball. A person who had perfect shooting skills but was made of glass would not be able to survive in the NBA. The physical test, as a person's positive data, was naturally the most important. The person who did the physical test for Jiang Hai was called Brian Bo. He could be considered half of Jiang Hai's hometown because he was also Chinese. However, he was an ABC. He only knew a little Chinese, but his English was very fluent. This made Jiang Hai feel a little out of place. It was not a happy thing to have to speak English with a guy who looked like someone he was familiar with. But no matter what, seeing that he was doing well in the NBA made him quite happy. After entering the equipment room, the first thing they did was a basic physical test, which was commonly known as a hardware test. Height, arm span, weight, etc. When measuring his height, Jiang Hai was a little surprised that he had grown taller. Height 189 centimeters, weight. "Oh, who the F *CK, you are not fat. Why are you so heavy?" 240 pounds. Brian Bo looked at the number displayed in front of him and could not help but cry out in surprise. When he heard his words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment, but then he nodded. He knew from the beginning that he would be very heavy. This was a matter of muscle density. Thinking about the Captain America in the Marvel world, he was 188 meters tall and weighed 240 pounds. His physical fitness could almost be regarded as the limit of human beings. Jiang Hai did not know who was stronger between him and the Captain America. After all, he had not traveled through time, but he was very sure that the Captain America's muscle density was very high. "Your muscle density may even be able to block a bullet," Brian Bo said with envy as he pinched Jiang Hai's steel-like arm. As an assistant strength coach, they were actually the fitness coaches of the Celtics. They dreamed of having a body like Jiang Hai's. Jiang Hai just smiled. Then Jiang Hai measured other data. The arm span was 197 centimeters. Although it was longer than the average person, it was not particularly long. It was still within the normal range. Thinking about Jianghai's Avery and Bradley, who was 188 meters tall but had a 2.02 meter arm span. Jianghai's arms were not too long. The leg length was 107 centimeters. Although it was not very long, it was not too bad. At least it was not the one-to-one type. He stood at a height of 2.46 meters. Next was the sports department's physical test. First, he jumped. When Brian Bow prepared the equipment, Jianghai suddenly jumped up. Except for Avery and Bradley, who had already seen Jianghai jump, Brian Bow, Lewis Turner, and John Turner, who came with Jianghai, all opened their mouths in surprise. Especially John Turner, the words that Philemon often used were already spewing out of his mouth. Who the F***ck? F***ck. What the F***ck? What the F***ck? Man, are you flying? Are you sure you're not flying? How did you jump so high? When Jianghai landed, John Turner could not help but yell at him. What the F***ck? Is there something wrong with the equipment? Looking at the data on the equipment, Brian Bow also cursed. 152 centimeters? What the F***ck? There's nothing wrong with your equipment. He really has such strength. Looking at the number in front of him, Avery and Bradley also cursed. He had already guessed that Jianghai's jump was amazing, but he did not expect it to be this amazing. At present, there was no special century record in the world for a standing high jump. But when it came to jumping, the first thing that came to mind was an NBA player. Among the NBA players, the one with the best jumping ability was probably Little Potato Weber, followed by Francis, A.I., and Nate Robinson. These short dunkers were all on the list, and their standing jumps were only about 1.2 meters, and that was when they were in a state of insanity. Demigod Vince Carter's jump was about 1 meters. Legend had it that Jordan's best jump was about the same as Carter's. However, the one with the best jumping ability was Earl McCormick. His name might be unfamiliar to everyone, but his nickname was probably familiar to many people. The GOAT, a super legend on the streets. Legend had it that he had once picked up coins and 20-cent bills from the edge of a backboard. He was only 1.88 meters tall, so it could be inferred that his jumping ability was about 1.5 to 1.55 meters. Jianghai's body was the limit of a human's body. Therefore, he could definitely jump higher than the GOAT. If that was the case, their jaws would drop. Then they would be so shocked that they would vomit blood. The 100-meter sprint, 9.61 seconds, was only 0.3 seconds away from the world record of 9.58 seconds. However, this was also because Jianghai was not used to the start. His reaction time at the start was slower. If he practiced for a while, it would not be too difficult for him to break the world record. The next series of speed tests were even more dazzling. The three-quarter sprint was 2.93 seconds, and the back and forth was 9.72 seconds. After everyone's jaws dropped, Jianghai began to prepare for another extremely important test, the bench press. At first, Brian Bow lifted 120 kilograms, but Jianghai did it. Although it was a little heavy, he did not feel anything. After 10 consecutive lifts, he asked for more weights. Then it was increased to 180 kilograms, but it was still very easy. Damn it. Do you know how many people in the Alliance can push 180 kilograms? Looking at Jianghai's relaxed appearance, Brian Bow began to mutter again. He still had one more thing to say. The difficult ones to move were all centers. I don't know, but I think it's still too light. Add another 50 kilograms. Jianghai casually put the barbell back on the bench press and moved his wrists. Then he spoke to Brian Bow, 50 kilograms? That's too risky. You know, the best players in the NBA can only bench press about 200 kilograms. Why don't you try 200 kilograms first? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Brian Bo did not say anything. Over there, Lewis Turner spoke up. As an assistant coach of a high school basketball team, he obviously knew a lot. But he did not think that Jiang Hai's strength was so terrifying. Okay. Hearing him say that, Jiang Hai did not know where his limit was. It was always good to be careful. However, after adding 200 kilograms, Jiang Hai still felt very light. He felt that nearly one-third of his strength had not been released. 200 kilograms was still far from enough. No, it's too light. Add another 50 kilograms. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai said to Brian Bo. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the four people here looked at each other. Their eyes were full of disbelief. Although when they tested Jiang Hai's weight and found that his muscle density was so high, everyone had a vague feeling that Jiang Hai's strength was not small. But when he really showed his strength, they were shocked. 250 kilograms? For Jiang Hai, it only took him a little more effort. After 10 times, he put it back to its original position. He looked at Brian Bo again. This time, Brian Bo didn't say anything and just directly increased the weight. But this time, he didn't add more than 10 kilograms. From 250 kilograms to 300 kilograms, Jiang Hai felt some pressure. When it reached 320 kilograms, Jiang Hai felt that the strength in his hands had almost reached the limit. At present, in the world, without any assistance equipment, the world record was 722 pounds, which was 327 kilograms. Jiang Hai could lift 320 kilograms without any training. This was enough to scare these guys out of their wits. On top of the barbell, there was a black mass of weight on both sides. Just looking at it made people shudder. The barbell was almost bent, but Jiang Hai could still lift it steadily. Bang! After Jiang Hai did 5 more bench presses, he put the barbell back in its original position. For the first time, he felt that his arms were a little sore. It seemed that 320 kilograms was his limit. That's too much of a beast. Big brother, you are my big brother. Can you teach me how to be so forceful? Seeing Jiang Hai put down the barbell, 3 of the 4 people next to him were silent. Only John Turner came over and asked with envy. This can't be taught. I'm born with it. Ask your dad. I don't train in the manner. Jiang Hai shrugged helplessly and said to John Turner. Indeed, he sometimes practiced boxing and ran in the manner. He really didn't show off. But for the 3 people next to him, Jiang Hai's physical test was so terrifying that it made them a little numb. This monster. Looking at the table on the computer, Brian Bo whispered. He even suspected that Jiang Hai was an alien in human skin. If not, how could his body be so strong? No matter what he thought, after the physical test, Jiang Hai had already followed Bradley to the training ground downstairs. Because there was a home game tonight, even though it was carnival night, the team still didn't have a holiday. Chapter 102. Ever since Rondo left, actually, before Rondo left, the Celtics' record wasn't very good either. After Rondo left, the Celtics' record seemed to have gotten worse. Other than their home win against the Timberwolves, they had already suffered 2 consecutive defeats. They lost to the Heat and the Magic, who also had a poor record. The Celtics were no longer a strong team in the league, so the Christmas war that everyone was looking forward to had nothing to do with them. However, it was still one of the faces of the NBA, so a game was arranged to be held on the night of the carnival. That night, they would be playing against the Brooklyn Nets. Although the Nets were bad now, they were much better than the Celtics on paper. If it was a normal team without a top player, they would have to think of a way to suck or make a trade. However, the Celtics didn't have such a tradition. Even if they were to lose to death, they would never play badly. Therefore, the team still had the energy to fight for victory. Skill level was skill level, and ambition was ambition. It wasn't their style to admit defeat before the game started. When Jiang Hai arrived at the training ground, he was surprised to find that although the record wasn't good, the team's atmosphere was good. At this time, the team's players were gathered in groups of 3 to 5 on the large training ground. Some were practicing shooting, some were practicing inside the three-point line, some were practicing hitting, grabbing rebounds, blocking positions, and the like. The NBA training ground wasn't a small place with only one basketball court. When Jianghu arrived, he saw that there were 10 basketball racks, which meant that there were 5 basketball courts. There was a lot of empty space next to each basketball court. There were many boys standing next to the wall in the distance. They wore the same clothes and looked young. They were mainly responsible for picking up the bouncing basketballs. Sometimes, they were also responsible for defending and passing the ball. These people should be the legendary ball boys. Among them, Jianghu saw a familiar figure. It should be the guy who played one-on-one with him on the basketball court. He seemed to be called John, but it was John in white. "Oh, you're here. Come, Jiang, follow him over there. I've arranged a shooting trainer for you. They'll evaluate your various abilities. I've heard Bradley talk about your godly shooting skills. Show us." When he saw Jianghu and Bradley coming over, Brad Stevens immediately looked at Jianghu and spoke to him. As his voice fell, 2 coaches came over and took Jianghu to the half of the empty court next to them. "How is he?" Watching Jianghu being taken away by the 2 coaches, Brad Stevens pulled Avery and Bradley aside and asked in a low voice. Hearing his words, Bradley could not help but feel a little hesitant. "I'll give you a reminder. You can call him a monster. Mr. Bree will give you the specific data later." After that, Bradley did not say more and ran directly to the court to practice shooting to warm up. As for Jianghu, at this time, he ran to the other half of the court. An assistant coach told Jianghu how to run in a while. This was the most basic outside zigzag running position. From the bottom corner of the left or right side, then run all the way up. After running to a 45-degree angle in the opposite direction, then run straight inside. After running past the backboard, then turn around and run outside the three-point line. Then run along the arc to a 45-degree angle on the opposite side, then run straight inside, then turn around and run out of the three-point line. Looking at it from above, this was a bit like a zigzag, which was the basic running position of all guards. Since it was a basic running position, it was not complicated. After the assistant coach ran it once, Jianghu knew how to do it. What he had to do was to receive the ball from the assistant coach at any time while running in these positions, then immediately catch the ball and shoot. This was also the training that tested a person's shooting accuracy the most. However, it seemed to be too simple for Jianghu. Brush, 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 brush. Jianghu did not hesitate to hit the shots one after another. They were all empty baskets. After all, it was just within the three-point line, and the furthest place was outside the three-point line. For Jianghu, such a distance was not difficult to hit. It's not interesting. Let's make the range bigger. Finally, after more than 30 consecutive shots, Jianghu stopped and said to the assistant coach. Hearing Jianghu's words, the assistant coach also glanced at Brad Stevens in the distance. In fact, Stevens had been observing Jianghu in the distance. He found that Jianghu's shooting was really a bug. The main reason why he went to look for Jianghu to try was that Bradley had said that Jianghu could continuously hit long three-pointers. As for what he said, the half-court area was the attacking point, and the shooting accuracy was 100%. Stevens himself did not believe it. After all, this was a real world, not a fantasy world. How could there be such a terrifying skill? If it was really so terrifying, then what was the point of the game? After the half-court period, the ball would be given to him, and then everyone would pull away. When was basketball so easy? Why didn't he know? So he only listened to it as a joke, but now that he saw Jianghu's shooting, it seemed to be really good. Hearing Jianghu's words, Bradley thought for a moment, nodded, and agreed to Jianghu's proposal. Seeing that he nodded, Jianghu smiled and took the basketball from an assistant coach. He came to a place one step away from the three-point line. Without saying anything, he took off and shot directly. However, the basketball was still the same as before. It went straight to the empty basket. Then 2 steps, 3 steps. 1.5 meters away from the basket, it was still an empty basket. Seeing this scene, Brad Stevens felt a little confused. Could it be that what Bradley said was true? At this time, more people also noticed Jianghu, who was practicing shooting in the distance. The terrifying three-point shot was really terrifying. Cough, we seem to have found a monster. At this time, Brian Bowe came in from the outside, took a form, and handed it to Brad Stevens. Seeing the form handed over by Brian Bowe, Brad Stevens's hands suddenly trembled, and then he looked at the guy who was losing 3 points in the half-court period with a horrified look. Are you sure you didn't write it wrong? Looking at Brian Bowe's form, Brad Stevens said with a puzzled look. I swear to God. Hearing what Brad Stevens said, Brian Bowe also said with a serious face. Hiss, if this is true, then this guy is really a monster, a super monster. Looking at the information in front of him, Brad Stevens's eyes were about to spit fire. Then he glanced at Jianghu, who continued to shoot there. He thought for a moment. He now saw Jianghu's shooting ability, but he still didn't know how good his shooting ability was under defense, so he wanted to try it. Thinking of this, he put the information aside for the time being, and then he clapped his hands hard. Everyone, gather here first, let's play a 15-minute team practice game. Hearing Brad Stevens's words, the eyes of the people who were going to watch Jianghu practice shooting three-pointers were attracted. Hearing the head coach's instructions, everyone did not dare to neglect. After all, there was no real boss on this team, so naturally, Brad's prestige was the strongest on the team. Jiang, you come here too. Let me explain. We are going to have a 15-minute 5-on-5 game. Your performance will determine your playing time tonight. Looking at the people in front of him, Brad said with a serious face. At present, the Celtics have signed a total of 15 players. In addition to the veterans Gerald Wallace, Marcus Thornton, and James Young who can't play because of injuries, there are 12 people who can play. Among these 12 people, there is no absolute saying who is the main force and who is the substitute. Whoever plays well may be the main force, whoever plays poorly may also be the substitute. When it came to the timing of their appearance, the faces of these people instantly became serious. Jared, Salinger, Evan, Turner, Avery, Bradley, Tyler, Zeller, Jeff, Green, your team, change into a white vest. Jay, Claude, Kelly, Olenek, Marcus, Smart, Brandon, Bass, Ann. Jiang, you guys change into a yellow vest. At the end of his speech, Brad suddenly paused and said to Jianghu. Hearing that there was something for him to do, Jianghu was a little surprised, but he did not say much. He just changed into a vest. Although he was not interested in playing in the NBA or playing professionally, since he said he wanted to come over to have fun, he naturally would not give up halfway. He went to the side to change into a vest and briefly communicated with his teammates. Are you playing the power forward or the power forward? The point guard of the yellow team, Marcus Smart, walked to Jianghu's side and asked him. Marcus Smart was the 6th rookie in the first round this year. The reason why the Celtics traded Rondo was mainly because of him. Although this guy looked like a prick, he had a very good personality. He was willing to do anything on the court to help the team. He was not the same kind of person as the current point guards who focused on offense. His defense was above average, and his offense was above average. He was very active in grabbing rebounds, and his ability to draw fouls was not bad. Most importantly, he had a heart that wanted to win. Even if it was just a mock competition, he wanted to win. He did not want to lose. The power forward. After thinking about it, although Jianghu's height was more suitable to play the power forward, Jianghu was very clear that although he had played with his dribbling at home for the past 2 days, it was limited to jogging and would not be broken. If he wanted to run or step over, it was better not to think about it. Under such circumstances, it was better to play the power forward. That's fine. In a while, you will stand in the position you are familiar with. I will pass the ball to you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Marcus Smart smiled at Jiang Hai. Then the 10 people walked on the court and prepared for today's practice game. Chapter 103. The white team did not have a true point guard, so Avery and Bradley was going to play the point guard, Evan Turner was the second, Jeff Green was the third, Tyler Zeller was the fourth, and Jared Salinger was the fifth. On the yellow team, Marcus Smart was the point guard, Jiang Hai was the second, Jay Claude was the third, Brandon Bass was the fourth, and Kelly Olenek was the fifth. Compared to the white team, the yellow team was obviously a substitute team. Although the current Celtics did not have an obvious main player or substitute, it was easy to tell who was more famous in this team. Currently, the most famous player on the team should be Gerald Wallace. However, because this daredevil worked too hard in the past, he aged very quickly. The original all-star player was now completely reduced to a substitute and a water cooler guard. He was covered in injuries and it was not easy for him to recover. Apart from him, the most famous player was Jamil Nelson, who was once an all-star player in Orlando. However, after coming to the Celtics as a bargaining chip in the trade for Rajon Rondo, he understood that it was no longer his era. He was probably only going to be a third substitute here, not much different from when he was with the Mavericks. Apart from these two, basically all the other big names were on the white team. Jeff Green was one of the 3 young masters of the Thunder. Avery and Bradley was the current boss of the team. Evan Turner was once the core of the Sixers. Of course, he did not become a core player in the end, but at least he was once a boss. With such a team, it should not be a problem to beat Jiang Hai's yellow team. As the two teams played the jump ball, Olenek, a hardworking Caucasian, was not as athletic as Salinger, who was once comparable to Andre Drummond, the core player of the Pistons. So, the jump ball was easily sent to the white team. After Avery and Bradley received the ball, they slowly pushed across the half-court. The point guards of the two teams were the type that lacked offense but had enough defense, so Bradley was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he first played his advantage, the point guard. As the ball was passed to Jeff Green from the waist position, Jeff Green also tried to lean on Jay Claude behind him. Even though Jay Claude had already defended very seriously, Jeff Green still leaned on him and used him as a fulcrum to turn and slide into the inside line. Olenek saw him come in and hesitated for a moment. He did not go up to defend because he was the only one inside at that moment. If he went up to defend and Jeff Green passed the ball, he would be in trouble. Under such circumstances, Jeff Green naturally did not hold back. With a light one-handed dunk, the ball went into the basket. 2 points, the white team was in the lead. Seeing Kelly Olenek's performance, Brad Stevens also noted something on his tactical board, but at that moment, no one had the time or leisure to look at him. When the white team's offense ended, it was the yellow team's turn. This time, Marcus Smart and Brandon Bass did a pick and roll to attract the opponent's change of defense in the lane and then passed the ball to Brandon Bass. Brandon Bass was also a very strange player. He was also a veteran player and had been in the league for 10 years. However, as a black man, he did not rely on his weight, his athletic talent, or his defense to stay in the league. Instead, he relied on his mid-range shooting. Apart from the first 2 years when he was with the Hornets, the team that was now renamed the Pelicans, he had some stumbling when he played there. Then, when he came to the Mavericks, he just happened to be in the Mavericks' most glorious period. As Nowitzki's substitute, he practiced a decent mid-range shot. Then, when he came to the Magic, he gradually made a name for himself. Then, he joined the Celtics and was considered a rotation point for the main force in the team. He usually played as a substitute, but also as a main force. It mainly depended on the opponent's situation. If the opponent's inside lane was too heavy to defend, then he would play as the main force. If the opponent's inside lane was very flexible, then he would play as a substitute. He could be considered a player who could do anything with one move. Now, after receiving the pass from Marcus Smart, facing Avery and Bradley's defense, he did not need to worry too much because of his height advantage. He received the ball and dodged to the side. Then, he jumped straight up and threw the ball. The ball hit the inside of the basket and bounced into the net. The score on both sides was 2-2. Attacking again, Avery and Bradley prepared to pass the ball to Jeff Green with the intention of attacking the strong points. However, he unexpectedly found that Evan Turner, who was standing in front of Jianghu, was asking for the ball with his hand open. Seeing this scene, Avery and Bradley was stunned for a moment. Then, he hesitated. It was not that he was unwilling to pass the ball to Evan Turner, but because he knew how strong Jianghu's defense was. Evan Turner did not know, but he knew very well. That was why he did not pass the ball to Evan Turner, who seemed to be stronger. However, Evan Turner did not understand. He was now asking for the ball with his hand open. After hesitating for a moment, Avery and Bradley still passed the ball to him. He did this to protect Evan Turner's face and also to let Jianghu show his strength. As for whether Evan Turner would explode, after receiving the ball, Evan Turner pressed his body down and looked at Jianghu in front of him with a serious face. He did not talk trash. In fact, in the Celtics, other than a few old hooligans, there were not many people who liked to talk trash. Evan Turner was also a quiet kid, but it was precisely because of his quietness that he did not feel comfortable in every team. Thinking back, before Evan Turner entered the NBA, he could be said to be the best college player in the United States. In 2009-10, he received all the honors that a college player could receive: the John Wooden Award, the Oscar Robertson Award, the Naismith Award, the Associated Press Player of the Year, and the National Player of the Year. All of them were his. When he entered the competition, the evaluation of the scouts could not be higher. He was a scoring machine that was impossible to guard against. He could create opportunities for his teammates. He had an extremely high ability to end games. He was a tenacious defender who was passionate about grabbing rebounds and steals. He could shoot, cut, shoot from long range, pass, grab rebounds, and block. His mind was always very clear on the court. His performance was extraordinary, he had extremely high leadership, and he was an all-round flank player. However, such a guy who was praised to the sky by the media and scouts struggled quite a bit after being selected by the Sixers with the second pick. The Sixers even sent away the original boss of the team, the small AI, Andre Iguodala, for him. However, his performance was quite unsatisfactory. His offense and defense were unstable. Although there was no problem with his attitude, his physical fitness was too poor. He had the ability to pass the ball, but it was above average. At the same time, it was easy for him to pass the ball. His rebounding ability was not bad among the guards, but when it came to the small forward, it was a little worse. With unlimited shooting rights and the halo of the team's boss, his average points per game in the first 2 seasons were only 7, 2 and 9. Although he broke 10 points in the last 2 seasons, there was no eye-catching situation at all. His average points per game in the 3rd year was 13, 3 points per game, and in the 4th year was 17, 4 points per game. Obviously, this was not what a boss should have. Later, the Sixers traded him to the Pacers at the last moment of the last season. His performance in the Pacers was not very good. With the end of the rookie's 4-year contract, he joined the Celtics this year. However, what was inconsistent with his status as the number 2 rookie was that he only had a salary of $72 million for 2 years. Therefore, he urgently needed to make a name for himself in these 2 years. Therefore, even if it was an internal team practice game, he would give it his all. Evan Turner, who was holding the ball, stood in front of Jianghu. His eyes were fixed on Jianghu's shoulder and he was ready to break through. His height of 2.1 meters was extremely intimidating in front of Jianghu. This made it seem as if he had already defeated Jianghu, but Jianghu was very calm at this time. He looked at the guy in front of him indifferently. Finally, Evan Turner moved. As he slammed the basketball on the ground, he also moved in an instant and broke through to Jianghu's left side. However, just as he was about to move, he unexpectedly found that Jianghu had already appeared in front of him. However, this had long been expected. He changed his center of gravity in an instant and dribbled the ball. At the same time, he was ready to break through to the right side. However, at this time, Jianghu appeared again and firmly blocked in front of him. This breakthrough by force. One change of direction was not Evan Turner's limit, but at this time, he was not prepared to do too many moves. His physical fitness was not very good. He was really not very good at changing directions at the last minute. Fortunately, he thought that in a situation where he had the advantage in terms of strength and height, breaking through by force might be a good choice. Therefore, he forced his way to the inside of the three-point line. However, when his body leaned against Jianghu's body, the powerful force even forced him to take a step. This kind of strength really made him a little scared. However, as an NBA starter, he still had his own ability. Although he was almost stopped by the collision, he did not stop. Instead, he continued to hold the ball and moved forward. 1 step, 2 steps. He had already reached about 2:00 clock of the free throw point. He forcefully carried Jianghu and wanted to break through. However, would Jianghu give him such a chance? As he jumped, Jianghu jumped as well. Evan Turner only felt his vision blur. In the next second, half of Jianghu's body appeared in front of him. Because he had just wrestled with Jianghu, he did not jump high. At this time, his line of sight was almost parallel to Jianghu's chest. How was he going to shoot? Jianghu gave him a very good choice, and that was not to shoot. Under Evan Turner's surprised gaze, Jianghu's right hand instantly pressed on the basketball between his raised hands. As Jianghu's right arm exerted force, a huge force came through. Chapter 104. Dong. With a muffled sound, the basketball in Evan Turner's hand was forcibly stabbed down by Jianghu's right hand. When the basketball fell to the ground, Evan Turner also fell to the ground again. His legs went soft and he sat on the floor. There was no other way. Jianghu's strength just now was too great. Attack, attack, attack. After Jianghu landed on the ground, he didn't give anyone a chance. He grabbed the basketball and gave it to Smart. At the same time, he rushed to the front court while shouting, "So strong." Looking at Jianghu's back, Evan Turner whispered. He underestimated Jianghu. He did not expect this guy's speed to be so fast and jump so high. Just now, when there was physical contact, this guy's jump should be more than 1 meter. Under such circumstances, his strength is still so great. Where did this monster come from? Looking at Jianghu, who had rushed to his half of the court, Evan Turner gritted his teeth and muttered. However, he was still very professional. He gritted his teeth and chased after Jianghu. But at this time, Jianghu's speed was at full speed. After Marcus Smart took the basketball, he immediately broke into the opponent's half of the court. However, Avery and Bradley blocked his path. Seeing that he had no chance and seeing Jianghu rushing behind him, Marcus Smart threw the ball to Jianghu. Originally, according to his idea, Jianghu would stop at this time and shoot a three-pointer. Just now, he saw Jianghu's shooting ability. In his opinion, it was very trustworthy. Or Jianghu could break in and shoot 2 points. After all, Evan Turner had not caught up yet. However, he found that Jianghu was destined to take an unusual path. About half a meter away from the three-point line, Jianghu received the basketball. The moment he received the ball, he did not slow down. Instead, he took the ball directly and rushed toward the inside of the three-point line. After a big stride, he had stepped into a position about 20 centimeters away from the three-point line. It's over. This guy treats basketball as football. Seeing Jianghu's action, John on the sidelines couldn't help but say with a smile. The others on the sidelines were also stunned for a moment, then sighed, especially Marcus Smart. It seemed that his fast attack was going to be Jianghu's mistake, but would Jianghu really make a mistake? At least, he didn't think so. After the first step, he took another big step and stepped straight into the 3-second zone. Just as everyone was surprised, Jianghu soared into the air at this time. He jumped high and far. Before any of the players could react, Jianghu had already flown to the side of the basket as if he had grown a pair of wings. He exerted force with both hands and buckled down. Clang! Only a loud noise was heard. Then, they saw Jianghu hanging high above the basket, and the basketball bounced under the basket. This was the first time that Jianghu sprinted from the backcourt and jumped for a slam dunk. There was only one word to describe it: cool. Yahoo! With a whistle, Jianghu jumped down from the basket and high-fived Marcus Smart, who was still in a sluggish state. Then, he ran back to defend. As for the others, they were a little confused. While these people were in a daze, Brad Stevens's eyes lit up on the sidelines. He knew that Jianghu's physical fitness was good, but he didn't expect it to be so good. 3 steps from the 3-point line? This kind of thing happened during a fast attack. It was really too surprising. At least, it took some time for him to react. We must sign him, no matter what the cost. Imagine if Jianghu did this in the game. Although the impact on the game was only 2 points on the surface, the impact on the morale was imaginable. If this monster was released, no one knew how big of an impact it would have on the basketball world. However, when he thought about how he was the one who released this monster, he felt his heart begin to twitch for no reason. This monster. At this time, Evan Turner, who saw the scene behind Jianghu, had no other choice but to smile bitterly and helplessly. For the following ball, except for Avery and Bradley, who was mentally prepared, the others were a little confused. So, the ball naturally didn't hit the target. After Olenek grabbed the rebound, he passed it to Marcus Smart. Smart dribbled the ball across the half of the court and happened to see Jianghu slowly running across the half of the court. Thinking about Jianghu's explosive dunk, he felt that this ball should also be played by Jianghu. Jianghu received the ball, and Evan Turner on the opposite side immediately greeted him. His pair of long arms waved in front of Jianghu. But this time, he was mainly defending against breakthroughs. He also knew that Jianghu's shooting was good, but now Jianghu had just crossed the half of the court. In his impression, Jianghu was definitely going to break through or dribble the ball up. But unfortunately, if he guessed correctly, then Jianghu would not be Jianghu. Looking at Evan Turner in front of him, Jianghu chuckled and then jumped directly in front of him. Who the F***ck? Seeing Jianghu's unconventional way of playing cards, Evan Turner immediately took a step forward and wanted to defend against Jianghu, but Jianghu had already jumped high at this time. In everyone's surprised eyes, Jianghu threw the basketball 1 step away from the center line. The basketball drew a beautiful arc and plunged into the basket. I told you that within his half of the court, he can hit all the shots, and his accuracy is unusually high. Seeing that everyone was getting more and more stunned, Avery and Bradley shrugged helplessly and said to them. Thinking back to when he first came back, he told his teammates and coach about Jianghu. But none of these people believed him at that time. Now, facts speak louder than words, and he didn't need to say anything more. Then, how do we defend against this? Hearing Avery and Bradley's words, Evan Turner couldn't help but hesitate and said to him. Hearing what he said, Avery and Bradley shrugged and then pointed to Brad Stevens on the sidelines. His meaning was very clear. Don't ask me, ask the boss. Seeing his appearance, Evan Turner sighed. It seems that I'm going to suffer today. It turned out that his guess was quite correct. He was indeed going to suffer. Smart attacked again, and Smart seemed to recognize Jianghu's point. He passed the ball again, and Jianghu didn't let him down. He caught the ball from a long distance and easily hit it. After 4 consecutive shots, Evan Turner had to go around and directly prevent Jianghu from catching the ball. However, he could prevent Jianghu from catching the ball, but he could just go inside the 3-point line. With a flash, he rushed inside the 3-point line. Smart saw Jianghu running and making gestures at the same time. Without saying anything, he directly hung the ball inside the three-point line. After all, this ball was a little far away, so it was hung a little high. However, for Jianghu, it didn't matter how high it was because he could get it no matter how high it was. Suddenly, under everyone's gaze, Jianghu jumped straight into the air and blocked Marcus Smart's pass at an absolute height. In an instant, his lower abdomen tightened. It felt as if Jianghu had stopped in the air. Before Zeller could react, he calmly dunked the ball into the basket. Wow, this is the first time I know that assists are so easy to get. The balls that were given to Jianghu were all given out by him. As a point guard, this was the first time Smart realized that it was so easy to be an assistant. If he played a game with Jianghu, would it be possible to break Stockton's NBA assist record? Thinking of this, his eyes became brighter and brighter, and Brad Stevens' eyes on the sidelines became even brighter. Sign him. No matter what, we have to sign him. Even if we give him a mid-level contract, we have to sign him. Just sign him for 1 year. Even if we give him the highest salary next year, it doesn't matter. We have to sign him. Looking at Jianghu, who was having fun and smiling brightly on the court, Brad Stevens' expression didn't change, but in fact, his hands in his pockets were trembling. In a while, sort out the video of this game. I want to use it. Looking at the stunned assistant coach on the sidelines, Stevens whispered. Hearing Stevens' words, the assistant coach was stunned for a moment, then nodded to show that he understood. This training game that followed was almost all for Jianghu. By the time Jianghu left the court, he had already played a full quarter of the game, 12 minutes. In these 12 minutes, Jianghu made a total of 12 of 13 shots, 7 of 7 three-pointers. There was a dunk, but his strength was too great, so he clasped the back of the basket and didn't dunk it in. In addition to this one shot, he made all his other shots. In 12 minutes, he scored 31 points. What's the current NBA record for a quarter? If I remember correctly, it should be Iceman George Gwynn and Mellon Carmelo Anthony with 33 points in a quarter. Now Jianghu easily scored 31 points without being the focus of the offense. Does that mean that he can break this record at any time if he wants to? Thinking about it, Brad Stevens was really a little excited. In addition to these 31 points, the other 4 blocked shots and 3 rebounds didn't seem so important. You take Jianghu to Mr. Angie first. I'll sort out the video and then I'll be there. Thinking of this, Brad Stevens' determination to sign Jianghu became stronger and stronger. He didn't wait for the end of the practice and directly pulled Avery and Bradley next to him. Then he handed the matter over to the assistant coach and left with the videographer. They needed to edit this 15-minute training game. As for Jianghu, he was taken by Avery to take a shower first. He washed off the sweat on his body, changed back to his original clothes, and went to the building on the other side of the arena. Today's second update was continuously delivered. If he didn't post it, there would be people scolding him. In fact, if he posted it, there would probably be people scolding him. Xiao Fei had been writing books for many years and had encountered a lot of readers. It was normal for them to give opinions when they read books. Xiao Fei would also give opinions when he read books. Generally speaking, Xiao Fei would add comments, of course, when Xiao Fei thought about it. Hee. However, there were always some people who posted threatening and insulting words. Generally, when he encountered such posts, Xiao Fei's way of dealing with them was to not delete them and ignore them. If he deleted them, they would have more to say. What about deleting the post? What about disrespecting the readers? Xiao Fei just ignored them. However, the things that these people said were more or less in his book. Although sometimes they were nitpicking, at least it proved that they had read his book. However, there were also some people who posted inexplicable comments. They obviously posted things that weren't in his book. There were also a bunch of replies below, as if they were real. Xiao Fei didn't know whether they were paid posters or just trolls. Regarding this, Xiao Fei felt very helpless. The people who could see this paragraph were actually people who followed Xiao Fei's book. Xiao Fei said a few words and complained, and everyone could understand. This book was now in Sanjiang. Although Xiao Fei didn't want Sanjiang to be first or second, if everyone felt that this book was okay, please vote for Sanjiang. If it stayed in the last place, no one would be proud, right? Chapter 105. The composition of an NBA team was not inferior to that of a large multinational corporation. It was not much different. In addition to the boss and the board of directors, the responsibilities of the club were also extremely strict. The general manager, the deputy general manager, the scouting department, the finance department, the publicity department, the internal affairs department, the legal department, the marketing department, the human resources department. It could be said that there were hundreds of people in the surrounding departments that were formed around the basketball team. This did not include the surrounding departments, such as the security inside the stadium, the people in charge of the surrounding shops, and the people who managed the small vendors, etc. In addition to these non-basketball people, there were many people related to basketball. The scouting department mentioned earlier was naturally one of them. The scouting department was generally planned under the general manager or the head coach. It depended on who had more say in the team, the manager or the head coach. If it was the Lakers, it would probably be under the general manager. If it was the Spurs, it would definitely be under the head coach. After all, Brad Stevens was still young for the current Celtics, so it was under the general manager, Danny Ainge. As for how many people there were in the scouting department, it was uncertain. However, there would be at least 6 or 7 official scouts, plus their assistants. After all, the people they were in charge of were different. Some of them were in charge of the NCAA in the western United States, the central United States, and the eastern United States. Some were in charge of high schools, some were in charge of low-level leagues, and some were in charge of overseas, Europe, Asia, South America, Australia, etc. The NBA placed a lot of emphasis on scouting. After all, what was the most important thing in this era? It was talent. In addition to the scouts, there were also many nutritionists in the cafeteria. Naturally, there were also many assistant coaches. It was like playing a game. Sometimes, a head coach would even have as many as a dozen assistant coaches. First of all, there had to be a first assistant coach responsible for arranging and practicing the tactics that the head coach had prepared. Next, there was an offensive tactics coach, a defensive tactics coach, and a fitness coach. These were the 3 most basic coaches. Under these coaches, there was also a shooting coach, an offensive coach under the basket, a positioning coach, a defensive drill coach, and so on. The fitness coach was also divided into basic fitness coach, strength coach, assault coach, and so on. In addition, there was also a team doctor. All in all, the NBA club was a huge organization. It was not as simple as what Jianghu had seen on TV. With so many people, it was naturally impossible to squeeze together with the players, so they had their own separate office building. Of course, there were also some teams that would work together in order to save space, or if the original training center was really built very large. For example, the Cavaliers Training Center and the Mavericks Training Center. The level of luxury of their training centers was not inferior to their home court. However, the Celtics were a century-old team, and they were not known for their wealth. Therefore, they naturally had to save money. Now, Jianghu and the others arrived at another building. Although the 2 buildings were separated, they were connected by a bridge, so there was no need to walk outside, which was troublesome. Not long after, Jianghu was taken by Avery and Bradley to an office. He respectfully knocked on the door. Not long after, Danny Ainge's voice came from inside. The 2 of them pushed the door open and walked in. As for John and Louis, they were very perceptive. They went to the parking lot to wait for Jianghu. It was better for outsiders like them to not be present when the contract was being discussed. "Sir, I brought Jianghu here." Walking into the office, Avery and Bradley spoke to the old man sitting behind the desk. Jianghu nodded at him. It was a greeting. "Well, Avery, you go back to training first. I'm looking forward to your performance tonight." Looking at the 2 people who walked in, Danny Ainge chuckled and said to Avery and Bradley. Hearing his words, Bradley did not say much. Instead, he turned and left. Before he left, he patted Jianghu on the shoulder. Jianghu could only pout. He probably knew what these people were going to say, but he was really not interested in becoming a professional player. The main reason he played basketball was to have fun, not to make money. Whether it was for money, for a leisurely life, or for his own condition, staying in the manor was the best choice. Don't forget, Jianghu was still counting on his own real dragon spirit to level up. But since he was already here, he might as well listen to what they had to say. Then Jianghu sat on the sofa opposite him under his signal. Since you're here, Mr. Jianghu, I think we'll get straight to the point. I think our team needs you. This is a short contract for 10 days. If there are no problems, I think you can sign him. This is an opportunity. If we are satisfied with your performance in 10 days, you will get a guaranteed contract until the end of the season. Seeing Jianghu sit down, Danny Ainge obviously did not have the leisure and time to talk to a little kid like Jianghu. Hearing Danny Ainge's words, Jianghu was stunned. Sorry, you just said a short contract for 10 days? Although Jianghu did not plan to be a professional player, what the hell was a short contract for 10 days? He had such a strong performance, and he was only going to give him a short contract for 10 days? To use a phrase often seen in domestic NBA forums, Jianghu felt insulted. Yes, you're right. Yes, I think you know your situation better than us. You are not a registered player in the Players' Union, so we need to help you register. Secondly, you have not received formal training, and you are already 27 years old. You don't have much potential to speak of. But since you can sit in front of me, that means you have proven yourself with your strength. You can stay. I am willing to believe in Brad, so we are willing to give you this opportunity. Hearing Jianghu's words, Danny Ainge said without changing his expression. Ahem, maybe Bradley did not make things clear to you. First, I am used to being lazy. I came today just to test the limits of my body, so I have no intention of joining you. Second, even if I wanted to join, I would not sign a short contract for 10 days. Don't worry, let me finish. I am not an Asian teenager with dreams. Living for basketball, dying for basketball, fighting for basketball for a lifetime, and so on, that is not my original intention. I am a manor owner. My manor is in the suburbs of Boston, in Winthrop. It is a huge manor that gathers a ranch, a fishing farm, and a winery. Looking at Danny Ainge in front of him, Jianghu said indifferently. I just spent $280 million to buy this manor this year. I am not saying this to show that I am rich. I know that compared to some famous stars or team owners, $280 million is not a big deal. But I just want to tell you that I am not short of money. So, I think our conversation about the contract can end here. Clearing his throat, Jianghu looked at Danny Ainge and said very seriously. Hearing Jianghu's words, Danny Ainge was also stunned. This was the first time he had seen such an amazing rookie. What was this guy thinking? Although I feel sorry, our conversation may have to end here. But Danny Ainge was not a little guy who had just entered society. Pretending to be tough with him, could you be tougher than him? Well, he thought Jianghu was pretending. But Jianghu did not say anything about this. He just stood up, shook hands with him, and left his office. Although he was in a bad mood after coming out, overall, Jianghu was still quite happy today. At least he knew where his limits were. After coming out of Danny Ainge's office, he did not go back to Avery and Bradley or Brad Stevens to talk about this. Instead, he went directly to the parking lot downstairs. There, the Turner brothers had been waiting for a long time. Hey, bro, how was it? Did they sign you? As soon as he saw Jianghu, John immediately asked Jianghu. No. Shrugging his shoulders, Jianghu didn't elaborate. It was quite shameful to talk about it. He was a billionaire, but someone threw a 10-day contract in his face. He really couldn't afford to lose this face. That's a pity. But bro, with your physical fitness, it would be even more of a pity if you signed. With your physical fitness, you should play rugby. Looking at Jianghu, John immediately said. Well, it seems that his true love is rugby. Well, let's go back. He opened the door of his F-650 and sat in the driver's seat. Then, under the envious eyes of John and Louis, he stepped on the accelerator and the car sped toward the exit of the parking lot. That's the car a man should drive. Looking at Jianghu's back, Louis muttered in a low voice. Well, bro, with your salary, you can forget about it in your life. Hearing Louis's sigh, John couldn't help but pour cold water on him, and then got into the passenger seat of Louis's car with a smile. Hearing his brother's words, Louis could not help but smack his lips. Yes, with my current salary, I can forget about it. He lowered his head helplessly, got into the car, then stepped on the accelerator and sped toward the exit. Just as Jianghu and others left, in the office building, Brad Stevens took a laptop and walked into Danny Ange's office excitedly, but when he found that the office was empty, he couldn't help but be stunned. Danny, where is Jiang? Looking at Danny Ange in front of him, Brad Stevens asked with some surprise. Although I don't know the strength of the person you and Avery like, his character is really not suitable to be a player. When I put the contract in front of him, he was not satisfied and left directly. Shrugging, Danny Ange said with a smile. Oh, who the hell, you should have kept him, he is the new god of basketball, my god. Hearing Danny Ange's words, even Brad couldn't help but swear. He threw down the laptop in his hand and left in a hurry. Is it necessary? Seeing Brad's gaffe, Danny Ange couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, then he laughed at himself. The new god of basketball? He didn't think that the new god of basketball would look like a Wuxia. Then he saw Brad put down the laptop, and there seemed to be a video on it. Out of curiosity, Danny Ange clicked on the play button. Chapter 106. Hey, boss, how was it? Did they sign you? Driving back to his manor, Jianghu got out of the car and saw Robinsi and the others coming from the warehouse in the distance. It seemed that they had just cleared the snow. As soon as he saw Jianghu, Robinsi asked with a smile. Hearing his words, Jianghu couldn't help but smile. They gave me a short 10-day contract. I'm not crazy, I'll sign that. Hearing what Robinsi said, Jianghu said angrily. Hearing Jianghu's words, Robinsi and the others also laughed. Jianghu really didn't need to go. By the way, boss, Ai Dehua is looking for you. After chatting for a while, Jianghu was ready to go back. As for Louis and John, they also had to go home. Their female companions were still waiting for them at home. But just as Jianghu was about to leave, Robinsi suddenly said to Jianghu. Not long after Jianghu left, Edward Anderson came over. He didn't say anything and only said that he would call him when Jianghu came back. Okay, ask him to come to my house. Hearing Robinsi's words, Jianghu nodded. In fact, even if Edward Anderson didn't say it, Jianghu probably knew why he came to find him. It was nothing more than two things, fishing and fish farming. To be honest, Edward Anderson's position in this manor was the most awkward. Because others had their own things to do, but he had nothing to do after patrolling the fishing ground every day. This made the old fisherman feel that he took Jianghu's money but did nothing. He felt uneasy and didn't want to do anything. Therefore, he always wanted to find something for himself to do. He had to admit that sometimes people were very strange. For some people, he was happy to be paid all day long and not do anything. For example, Jianghu in the past. However, some people, such as Edward Anderson, had to do something once they were paid. Otherwise, they would feel uncomfortable all over. Less than 10 minutes after Jianghu returned to his room, Edward Anderson, who smelled of the sea, walked in from outside. Hey, boss, I heard you went to the Celtics to be a player. How's it going? As soon as he saw Jianghu, Edward Anderson, who had changed his shoes outside, said with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai helplessly threw a beer at him and said in a bad mood, "Don't mention it. Have a seat. What do you want?" "It's like this, boss. I want to ask if you have any plans to raise fish this year." After receiving the beer that Jiang Hai threw over, Ai Dehua didn't rush to open it. Instead, he put the beer on the table and asked Jiang Hai somewhat awkwardly. "Well, I can't say that I don't have any plans, but it depends on the funds." Thinking about the money left in his bank account, Jiang Hai rubbed his temples helplessly. When could he say that money was just a string of numbers? It's already January. If you want to raise fish this year, you have to speed it up. Of course, if you don't want to raise fish now, you can still get some income from the fish farm. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson also sighed. He knew that Jiang Hai had invested more money in the ranch, which was more profitable, so the plan for the fish farm would naturally be delayed. However, now that he heard Jiang Hai's words, he also felt a little helpless. Actually, no one will go against the Green Franklin, right? But I remember hearing you say that if we raise fish in the fish farm, it will cost at least tens of millions of dollars. But with me, apart from the tax that needs to be paid in April, I can only use about $10 million. This money is not enough. After hearing Ai Dehua's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shrug helplessly. For him, it was great to be able to make a lot of money, but the problem now was that he didn't have enough money. Jiang Hai didn't have the strength to manage bank loans and so on. He didn't want to owe anyone money, even if it was the government. Actually, if we raise fish, we don't have to raise so many at the beginning. The tens of millions I mentioned is the price of raising fish in saturated conditions. If we are not saturated, it won't be too troublesome. And if you have some shortage of money, we can make up for it with the sea we have now, Edward Anderson immediately said when he saw that Jiang Hai wanted to raise fish. What do you mean? Hearing Ai Dehua's words, Jiang Hai looked at him with some surprise. The most expensive cost of raising fish, in addition to the money for the fry, is to build a natural environment and food chain suitable for their growth. But in the past few months, I have been checking the situation of our fish farm. I found that the original food chain in our fish farm is quite stable. We only need to plant more seaweed, and then introduce some Arctic shrimp, crabs, cuttlefish, and octopus, and it will be enough to raise millions of cod fry, Ai Dehua said immediately when he saw Jiang Hai asking him. It takes at least 5 to 7 years for a cod fry to grow into an adult, which is to say, to reach the state of sexual maturity. If it was in the south, it would only take 3 to 4 years, but this is the north, so there is no other way. But if it only reaches the state where it can be sold for money, raising it for a year is about the same. The size of a yearling cod, if it is adequately nourished and there are no natural predators, it is not a problem for it to grow to about 20 centimeters, and such a cod is about a pound. Based on the current price of fish, a pound of cod was about 2 yuan. With a few million fish, the annual income would be close to 10 million yuan. There was no need to think about making money, but they would not lose too much. Most importantly, this was only the first year. Because the construction of the food chain had cost too much, in the second year, just the cost of labor and fish hatchlings would be enough to make a profit. If the heavens opened their eyes, they would be able to turn a profit after 3 years of peace. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Jiang Hai can't help but smack his lips. If there was no profit from the ranch, Jiang Hai might have listened to Edward Anderson and raised cod. After all, this kind of fish has a large sales volume. As long as it is raised, there is no need to worry about sales. Most importantly, this fish is easy to raise, has a high survival rate, and is not easy to die. It is the best choice to raise a large number of fish. But now, after hearing Edward Anderson's words, Jiang Hai does not want to raise this kind of fish, because it is too cheap. Whether it was raising fish or cattle, Jiang Hai wasn't worried about the quality of these animals because he had the support of his blood. Although he was always bleeding, this made him somewhat speechless. He hoped that after leveling up, he would be able to solve this problem. But at least he wasn't helpless. He had a way to kill them, so this gave him the idea that he could raise more dangerous fish. Cod was a safe species, so he didn't like it because it was too cheap. Can we raise some more expensive fish, such as tuna, Atlantic salmon, rainbow trout, grouper, and so on? After thinking about it, Jianghu recognized that these are the only more expensive edible fish, so he asked Edward. This can't be tuna. This tuna can't be farmed. This thing runs around for its whole life and will die if it is trapped in one place. Atlantic salmon can be farmed, but this kind of fish is a migratory fish. It needs to grow in fresh water for the first 4 years. If we only buy a 4-year-old half cub, the cost will be very high because a 4-year-old Atlantic salmon is actually very valuable. Rainbow trout and Atlantic salmon are the same. We only have the sea, and there are no fresh rivers or lakes. This kind of migratory fish is not very easy to farm. Finally, grouper can be farmed, but the price of this thing is not high, about the same as cod. Hearing Jianghu's words, Ai Dehua analyzed with Jianghu. Everyone in the world knew that tuna was expensive, but no one in the world had raised this thing because this thing, like some sharks, needed to constantly swim in order to get oxygen, and most importantly, this kind of fish lived in groups. In other words, to raise tuna, one must first have a large enough body of water to let these fish swim continuously in order to get oxygen, but the oxygen in this body of water was fixed, and if one raised too much, they would suffocate to death. It was also impossible to get oxygen in the sea. If one raised too little, there would not be enough money to raise the fish, so far, no one had raised this thing at all. It was said that Japan was now raising it, but no one knew the progress of raising it. As for salmon and rainbow trout, everyone knew that this kind of fish was very valuable, especially wild ones, but the problem was in front of them. How to raise migratory fish? Directly raising them in the sea, the cost was too high. If they didn't raise them, where could they find a river to raise small fish? These were all problems. Finally, the grouper, this thing's range was too wide. There were expensive ones, and there were also cheap ones. The cheap ones were like gold grouper, green grouper, gentian grouper, pearl gentian, and so on. They were all very cheap, and even the price was not much different from cod. The expensive ones were like tiger grouper, eastern star grouper, and these were all expensive. However, eastern star grouper could only be raised in the southern Indian Ocean. This was a tropical fish, and the same was true for tiger grouper, a tropical fish. As for the most expensive mouse grouper, it was not a grouper, but a perch family. Its scientific name was humpback perch. Although this kind of fish could also be raised, its survival rate was quite low. Now, many people raised this fish as an ornamental fish. It could be seen how difficult it was to raise this kind of fish, so for Jianghu's proposal, Edward Anderson could only smile awkwardly. He had to admit that sometimes, his boss was really whimsical. These fish can't be raised? Alas, although I don't have any prejudice against codfish, this kind of fish can't be sold at a high price. I think you've seen and eaten the cows in our manor. My original intention was to only raise high-grade animals in our manor. I have a feeling that the animals raised in our manor are destined to be extraordinary. Something like codfish that can't be sold at a high price. Alas, think about it, is there anything that is easier to raise and can be sold at a high price? After hesitating for a while, Jianghu decided to tell Ai Dehua some things. Of course, he would not say more. He did not want to be targeted by others. Something that is more valuable, can be sold at a high price, and is considered easy to raise. It seems that there is. Well, let's get to the point. Oh, he. Today's 2 chapters were delivered consecutively. Chapter 107. $40 for spotted shrimp, $30 for tiger-striped crab, $100 for king crab, $100 for geoduck, $30 for dragon crab, $12 for red crab, $240 for mozzarella, $40 for Atlantic salmon, $60 to $200 for bluefin tuna, $45 for yellowfin tuna, $65 for big eye tuna, $100 for mozzarella tuna. Sitting in the car on the way to Boston, Jianghu looked at the form in his hand and muttered in a low voice. Edward Anderson, who was driving, glanced at Jianghu with a smile, then shook his head gently. Ever since Jianghu wanted to raise expensive seafood, he had been studying these things like a demon. He first looked up some information on the internet, then went to the local seafood market to ask about it. Of course, he also asked about Chinese restaurants. What he was muttering now was the data he had researched over the past few days. Of course, the unit was kilograms. In the United States, there was no such thing as kilograms. If it was converted to pounds, Jianghu was too lazy to do so. Aquatic products, especially marine products, naturally had different prices depending on location and size. He was talking about the normal average price, not the price of the premium quality. No matter what it was, as long as it was premium quality, the price would be unusually high. Take codfish, which Jianghu thought was worthless, as an example. As long as the codfish was more than 1 meter long, it would sell for thousands of dollars a day. If it was more than 1.5 meters, it would sell for tens of thousands of dollars. Normally, the codfish that could be sold were only 30 centimeters long, which was a little more than a caddy. 2 codfish added together would not even weigh 1.5 kilograms. That was the difference. As for the smaller ones, the ultra-low temperature ones could only be sold for 80 cents a pound, while the cold ones could be sold for $1.75 a pound. Jianghu had also heard of the term cold for the first time. There were 2 ways to preserve fish. One was to freeze the fish completely at a temperature of -60 degrees Celsius. Although this method would not spoil and was suitable for long-distance transportation, at the same time, it would also destroy the original taste of the fish. Generally speaking, other than large-scale fishing boats, very few fishing boats would do this. Of course, some cheaper fish would also do this. As for chilled fish, it was to use a low temperature to slightly freeze the fish. There was a limit to the freezing time. It could only be kept for 12 days. But if it was sold to the fishmonger on the 11th day, the fishmonger would not accept it. Basically, this kind of fish was caught in the morning and sold in the afternoon. Only then would people buy it. This kind of fish was basically expensive. If the price of a fish was not more than $30, fishermen would not be willing to put it in the cold storage. It should be known that the cold storage was just like the freezer layer of a refrigerator, while the cold storage was like an air conditioning room. The electricity it consumed was like diesel on the sea, which was extraordinarily high. Therefore, Jianghu had been looking for expensive sea fish in the market these days. So far, the situation was not bad. In fact, if one wanted to raise fish to make money, the best choice was still codfish. Because Jianghu's fish farm was next to Winthrop, it might be faster to sail by boat than by car. Here, after catching fish in the morning, they would sell them. They would definitely be chilled, and a pound could be sold for $1.75. Even if it was a pound per fish, according to Edward Anderson's idea, the survival rate of at least 60% after investing 10 million seedlings in the initial stage. That would be 6 million seedlings, $1.75 per fish, which added up to $10.5 million. Coupled with the income from the fish food, an annual income of $12 million shouldn't be a problem. However, the money invested in the seedlings, the second year's seedlings, the money to build the ecosystem, the money to pay the workers, the diesel for the boat, and so on would be deducted. In total, the investment in the fish farm would be about $30 million. If they were lucky, they would be able to recoup their investment in 3 years, and at least be stable in the 4th year. Almost half of the annual income could be earned. Of course, this half of the income would be taxed. But at least before they recouped their investment, they didn't have to worry about taxes. This was also one of the benefits of the United States. For these farmers and fishermen, they only collected the money they earned, and not the money they earned back. According to Edward Anderson's calculations, Jianghu still had the money to invest. After all, the money didn't need to be invested all at once. Secondly, AI Dehua had also recently investigated the underwater situation of Jianghu's fish farm. he found that there were definitely a lot of fish under the water. After 10 years of recuperation, Jianghai's underwater ecosystem was extremely perfect. The number of fish was considerable. Even though it was winter, there were still a lot of fish under the water. According to AI Dehua's preliminary estimate, there were about $10 million worth of fish in the water. Of course, this was under the condition that they were all fished out. With $10 million, not to mention supporting the income of the fish farm for the first year, it was enough for Jianghai to even pay for all the buildings. According to Edward Anderson, there was nothing wrong with doing this, but Jianghai was a little unwilling to accept it. He had always thought that since he was also raising fish and he had a cheat, why couldn't he raise some shiny fish? That was why he went to the market and Wuxia restaurant to inquire about the situation. Of course, in addition to these things, there were also some very valuable things, but Jianghai didn't think of raising them, at least not now. The most famous of them were sea cucumbers and abalones. It was because these two things didn't have much of a market in the United States. Although the market in China was just right, just like the fishermen in the Atlantic region, they knew that the price of the same thing would double if they were to send it to Wuxia. This was a problem. Some of the top goods could be transported by air, but what about the comprehensive trade? All of them by air? That was bullsh*t. After being frozen at ultra-low temperatures and then thawed, the taste would be different, and they wouldn't be able to be sold at a high price at all. As for the frozen ones, they could only be kept fresh for 12 days. They would be caught on the first day and delivered on the second day. If they went by sea, they could cross the Atlantic Ocean, cross the Indian Ocean, reach the Pacific Ocean, turn a corner, and reach Wuxia without encountering any trouble. 12 days was enough for them. Therefore, although Jianghai had the ambition to raise a large number of high-quality fish, everything had to be done slowly. At the very least, he had to prove that he could raise such good things and determine the market before deciding whether to raise them or not. But no matter what he decided to raise, he was determined to raise fry. It was just that the quantity was a problem. At the same time, since he had decided to raise fish, no matter what kind of fish he raised, he had to prepare to start building an ecological circle. So today, Edward Anderson took Jianghai to Boston. They were going to raise fish. Not long after they got off the highway, they saw the Celtics North Shore Garden Arena in the distance. Looking at the arena, Jianghai couldn't help but think of the trial training that day. It was hilarious. A 10-day contract, of course. On the third day after that day, when they lost to the Nets at home and the Wizards away, Bradley and Brad Stevens came to Jianghai's house with a guaranteed annual salary of $1.98 million. They hoped that Jianghai would agree to join them. But let alone $1.98 million, even if the annual salary was $19.8 million. Air. Jianghai might be tempted, but it's a pity he doesn't have that zero. The difference is still huge. What can't he do that he can't earn $2 million? Furthermore, he still has to pay half of the taxes to the U.S. government, which is only $1 million. Does he lack this amount of money? What a joke. If he has the time, he can go to the sea and make more than this amount. So, in the end, Jianghai did not agree. The two of them expressed their helplessness, but they said that they will not give up. Jianghai doesn't care if they will give up because it will be New Year's Eve soon. In the United States, there was nothing good about the New Year. It wasn't as interesting as Christmas. The major competitions didn't give off the feeling of being the focus of attention. Only some TV stations would do some New Year's Eve concerts. If Jianghai was in New York, he could go to Times Square to watch the concert and then pick up some girls. Maybe he could even get a kiss at the end of the new year. But obviously, he doesn't have the mood to go. So, he spent New Year's Eve alone at home. With the arrival of January, the coldest time of the year had arrived in the Boston area. After Bell returned, Robbins and the others had to end their vacation in advance and start to get busy. As for John and Louis, after the new year, they returned to the place where they should go. Although Jianghai's manner was very fun, after all, they still had their own things to think about. At the same time, Aidehua and Jianghu also have something to do. They need to buy water plants. The basic structure of the ecological food chain is that big fish eat small fish eat shrimps, and shrimps eat water plants. In Boston, unless you raise strange fish, you have to put in the fry at the beginning of spring, which is March. The fry need to eat when they go into the sea. Of course, they can be fed at a fixed location, but they also need to hide to avoid being eaten by big fish. So, when the fry are put in, the ecological environment must be built. Water plants, as the most basic part of the food chain, need to be put in first. When the water plants grow for about a month, you will start to put in shrimp, crab, shell, and so on. After these seedlings grow for another month, you will start to put in the fry. However, because the sea is still cold in March, you need to put in a bigger body when you put in the fry. 2 small larvae will not do. These are all things to pay attention to. In the past, Jianghu was not very clear about it. He has to admit that you are never too old to learn. When Jianghu was thinking about what to raise in his heart, the car slowly drove into the port in the center of Boston where Jianghu had been before. But this time, it went in another direction. Jianghu saw a large number of grid boxes from afar. This is the wholesale market of Boston's fry. Today's second update, continuously delivered. Chapter 108. Hi, Aidehua, here. This area was not the territory of a fish seedling wholesaler, but almost 90% of Boston's fish seedling wholesalers were concentrated there. Aidehua had been dealing with ships for most of his life, so he was naturally very familiar with this place. Before he came, he had already called to contact people, so after driving in, he didn't pay attention to the people outside who were waving and asking questions, but he drove straight inside. After about 3 minutes, a black man appeared in front of Jianghu's F-750 and waved at Aidehua with a happy face. Aidehua turned the steering wheel and stopped in front of him. As the two opened the door and jumped out, Aidehua and the big man on the other side couldn't help but hug each other, showing a brotherly love. "Boss, let me introduce you. This is Iron Bull, Porter and Eva, my good brother. We went out to sea together on a fishing boat to catch sperm whales. He is the largest private fish seedling wholesaler here. Iron Bull, this is my current boss, from the mysterious East, Jianghu, Mr. Jiang." After hugging the big black man, Aidehua introduced him to the two with excitement. Hearing Aidehua's introduction, the big man named Porter and Eva reached out his hand first. "Hello, Mr. Jiang, you can call me Iron Bull." After shaking hands with him, Jianghu also nodded with a chuckle. Jianghu was also looking at this guy. He is more than 1.9 meters tall, bald, and shiny black skin. Although it is winter now, he is not wearing too much. His huge size makes people feel scared. It is not bad to be called Iron Bull. Aidehua had already told Jianghu about this person's origin on the way here. This black man used to be a crew member with Aidehua in California, but he was younger than Aidehua. Later, after the two made money, Aidehua came back to retire, and he opened a fish seedling company in Boston. Perhaps because they were black, they were discriminated against in the beginning. However, later on, they relied on their strong means and the fact that they were really good seedlings that allowed them to gain a foothold here. After all, in a capitalist society, those rich people were more concerned about whether you could bring them wealth, not the color of your skin. When there was a conflict between racial feelings and US dollars, the US dollars were often more powerful. Although I don't dare to say that my place is the largest in Massachusetts, I definitely have the most complete variety here. Aidehua has already told me your purpose for coming here. Since you want to choose grass seeds, you need to order the fish first because different fish eat different bait, and different bait naturally eat different seaweed. After being polite with Jianghu, Iron Bull led Jianghu and the others into the room behind him. "I have a very complete set of fish seedlings here. I have almost every type of fish that can be farmed here. There are a few boxes of Atlantic cod here. Although you don't plan to raise this kind of fish, I still have to say that this kind of fish is actually the easiest to earn. Moreover, it's almost guaranteed that you won't lose money. Iron Bull introduced to Jianghu as he walked into the grid area behind him. The price of the cod seedlings here was really not expensive. It was about 13 cents per tael. According to the calculation, a mature fish could be sold for $1.75, which was almost a dozen times the profit. After deducting the labor cost and the cost of the bait, one could earn about 90 cents per fish for a year. 1 million fish would be $900,000, and 10 million fish would be $9 million. Raising this kind of fish could indeed make a profit without making a loss, but in Jianghu's view, the scope was too small and not suitable for him to develop. This is a herring. It's a type of fish that can be raised with cod, but it doesn't grow big. It's like a gift from Santa Claus. It's a surprise no matter how many there are. After walking past the most cod ponds, they arrived at the bottom ponds. The herring seedlings in the ponds were smaller than the cod. After all, the fish itself did not grow very big. The largest was about 30 centimeters. Unlike cod, which could live for a long time and grow big, this kind of fish was basically a set with cod. When raising cod, they would more or less raise some herring. The economic value of this kind of fish was similar to that of cod. It could be sold for money, or it could be used as rations for cod. Of course, the most important thing was that its sales were large, and there was no need to worry about sales at all. The price of this kind of fish was 8 cents per tael. After all, it could also be used as rations, so it was not expensive. This is the main lobster pond, and this is the emperor crab pond. I specially imported them from Asian island countries, but they are not very easy to raise. This is the bamboo shrimp, which came with this kind of crab. Although the taste is good and the price is good, it is also not very easy to raise. This is the oyster pond. I have almost all the oysters in the world here. This is the high prestige oyster, produced in Ireland. This is the king of oysters, the Ghidorah oyster. This is the best oyster. If it grows well, it can be sold for $20 in a Western restaurant. I heard that they will sell it for about $10. These damn Western restaurants. After walking through the cod and herring pond, Jianghu saw a crustacean purse net in front of him. The things in the purse net made Jianghu's eyes light up. Needless to say, the Maine lobster was a representative species of Maine and the Boston area. Although the local price was not high, Jianghu had always wanted to raise them. It was just that he had not dived into the water these days, so Jianghu was not sure if his territory was suitable for raising these things. If it was suitable, he would raise a few. Although eating lobster was despised by others in China and was said to be a nouveau riche, Jianghu was now a nouveau riche, so he wanted to eat them. In addition to the lobster, he also saw other valuable things that he had investigated, such as the emperor crab. The emperor crab and the emperor crab were not the same kind of crab. The emperor crab actually referred to the Kanshaka stone crab, which belonged to the stone crab family. The emperor crab's scientific name was the giant pseudoliteral crab, which belonged to the crab family. It was easy to distinguish from its appearance. The emperor crab was a spider crab, a killer crab, the kind with particularly long legs. It looked more like a spider than a crab. The emperor crab, on the other hand, was an enlarged crab. It was very big, quite big. People in Europe and America would not eat the killer crab, but they liked the emperor crab very much. However, the price of this guy was also very good. The average price of 1 kilogram was about $100, and a grown emperor crab weighed at least 10 kilograms. In other words, one crab could be sold for more than $1,000, and this was when it was bought raw. If it was cooked in a Western restaurant, it would be even more expensive. And this kind of crab was so expensive that it could be ignored. Many seafood restaurants did not dare to buy it. They were afraid that it would die after being raised in the restaurant, or that no one would order it. After all, one crab could cost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. In the current situation in China, without people with 2 mouths to feed, there were not many people who could afford to eat it. Although the bamboo shrimp was not as expensive as the spotted shrimp, if it was raised, 1 kilogram could be sold for about $20. Among the seafood, it was a pretty good price. Of course, the most expensive clam was the geoduck clam, which was also available here. As for the oysters, which were very popular in Europe and America, Jianghu was a little confused. This was because he also ate oysters in China. However, oysters should be very cheap. The smaller restaurants in China, or in the night market, sold oysters for $1, $2 each. He really could not understand why an oyster could be sold for $20. Was it robbery? In addition to these things, there were many other kinds of shellfish here. These were also the fish food that Jianghu wanted to buy in the future. There were all kinds of clams, and clams. Well, it was not called that in the United States. But the things here were the same. Along the way, Jianghu also looked at the things here. The things here were indeed very complete, and there were even abalones. However, for things like abalones, ordinary small abalones were not worth much. They were sold in the domestic seafood market for a few dozen dollars per kilogram. The bigger ones were sold in some seaside cities for more than $10 per abalone. Those truly precious abalones were top-notch. The so-called top-notch did not refer to how many heads the abalones had, but how many abalones there were in a caddy. The so-called 2-headed abalones meant that 2 abalones weighed a caddy. The price of such abalones could be imagined. The 3-headed abalones were much cheaper than the 2-headed abalones. The abalones that cost dozens of yuan per caddy were estimated to have more than 10 heads. The abalones that cost more than 10 yuan per caddy were estimated to have 7 or 8 heads. Such abalones were not worth much. After walking past these valuable shellfish, they arrived in front of the fish grid. But obviously, the fish here were much better than cod and herring. Iron Bull also stopped here and introduced them to Jianghu. This fish is much better in the south because it is too cold here. This is a 3-year-old fish. Nominally, it can be directly thrown into the sea, but in fact, it still needs to be raised for a period of time. I heard from AI Dehua that there is no fresh water source in our country, so this fish is not easy to raise. If you want to raise them directly, I recommend these 3 kinds of fish: grouper, giant grouper, and American red fish. Iron Bull looked at Jianghu and said seriously. In fact, there were many types of grouper, but if it was just called grouper, it would be tiger grouper, because the tiger grouper was the real grouper. The giant grouper was also called dragon grouper in China, and its price was almost the same as grouper, but its size was much larger. Finally, the American red fish was also a fish that Jianghu cared about after all. So basically, it needs to be raised for 2 years to sell. The price is about the same, about $30 per kilogram. But the survival rate of this fish is very low. Not only does nature eliminate some of them, but they also kill each other. They need to eat constantly, and the cost is also very high. The survival rate of the fry is less than 40%. Of course, I am talking about wild breeding. If it is in a cage, it will be relatively higher. Looking at Jianghu, Iron Bull slowly introduced. Looking at the grid he pointed at, Jianghu hesitated. Today's first update, 2 consecutive updates. Sure enough, after returning to the main plot, the book reviews section was much calmer. Happy, aha. Chapter 109. Logically speaking, it was the most profitable way to raise a fish. A young fish cost $1.15. After 2 years, the cost of a fish was about $50. If it grew to 15 kilograms, it would cost $30 per kilogram, which would be $450 per fish. It seemed like a 9-fold increase, but one fish could earn $400. 100 fish was $40,000, and 1,000,000 fish was $400 million. But to raise 1,000,000 fish, based on the survival rate, one would have to buy 3 million fish seedlings. The cost of a seedling was $50, so in total, it would be $150 million. Someone said that it was still very profitable. What if it was $250 million? But it had to be understood that there might be natural or man-made disasters. For example, what if there was a tsunami? Boston was so prone to typhoons. If there was a tsunami, an earthquake, or an oil pipeline in the Pacific Ocean that happened to blow up and hit Jianghu's fish farm, the American government would compensate a part of it, but that was only a part. In the end, Jianghu would still lose everything. This was also why most fishermen in North America were willing to raise cod and herring even though they knew that raising these expensive fish could make money. At least those things were guaranteed. Even if they were to fail this year, there would still be subsidies from the American government, so they would not lose too much. Therefore, people who were willing to take the risk to raise these kinds of fish were also rare in the United States. Basically, if they wanted to raise these kinds of fish, they would only raise them in a small area. No one was willing to raise them in a large area. As for the rest of the bream, I won't recommend them to you because these fish are solitary, and it's not easy for you to catch them. Finally, this is the American redfish. This fish has just become popular in recent years, and I heard that it's very popular in China. The price per kilogram of adult fish is about $12, but the price for juvenile fish is 20 cents, which is about the same as codfish, but much more expensive than codfish. It's also easier to raise and grows faster. The biggest fish can grow up to 3 kilograms in a year, and the smallest fish can grow up to more than 1 kilogram. The only troublesome thing is that they eat a lot and are prone to diseases, so they have a high demand for seawater. After introducing the grouper and anchovy, Iron Bull focused on introducing this kind of fish to Jianghu. This kind of fish was also farmed in China. Therefore, Jianghu had some understanding of this fish. Its appearance was similar to yellow croakers, and its taste was similar. After all, they were of the same genus, the grouper family. They were considered distant relatives. In the United States and Mexico, this kind of fish was the favorite fish of sea fishermen. It tasted good and was not too fishy, but it was rich in nutrients. It was a very good fish. Recently, this kind of fish was popular in China. Therefore, in the United States, this kind of fish did not have to worry about sales. Most importantly, this kind of fish was easier to raise, and the seedlings were cheap. If there was no problem with the water in the fish farm and they did not get sick, the cost of raising a fish was about $2. 1 kilogram was $12. According to raising it for a year, an average of 2 kilograms would be $24. One fish could earn $22. 1 million fish would be $22 million. The survival rate was much higher than the grouper. This kind of fish liked to eat its own kind. This kind of fish did not have such a habit. As long as there was enough food, there would not be a big problem, so when Jianghu heard this, he was also a little biased towards this kind of fish. Can you raise it together? But it was just a suggestion. Jianghu hesitated for a moment and asked him. Hearing Jianghu's words, Iron Bull couldn't help but be stunned. Raise it together? Boss, have you really decided? Getting in the car, Ai Dehua looked at Jianghu and couldn't help but ask hesitantly. Yes, it's decided, so happily. Hearing Ai Dehua's words, Jianghu also smiled and said to him. Well, you're the boss. I've never raised a fish like this before. With a helpless sigh, Ai Dehua said inexplicably, because in the end, Jianghu still decided to raise them together. He wanted to raise 3 million American redfish, 200,000 grouper and 200,000 giant grouper, and finally add 50,000 salmon. In addition to these things, he also raised other things, such as king crab. This kind of seedling is sold by the ton, $500,000 per ton. Well, Jianghu bought a ton of them, $300,000 per ton. Maine lobster is the cheapest, $20,000 per ton. Jianghu bought 10 tons at one time and prepared to throw them into his ocean together with Haiyu. Fortunately, his fishery was big enough, otherwise, these things alone would be enough to make the fishery a mess. Jiang Hai didn't want to waste any more time. He didn't want to waste any more time. Instead, he bought 10 tons of them. Just the money for these seedlings added up to a very considerable income. The American king snapper was 20 cents per fish, so 3 million fish would be $600,000. The grouper was $1 per fish, so a total of 200,000 fish would be $200,000. The anaconda was $1 per fish, so a total of $230,000 would be $200,000. The anaconda was 15 cents per fish, so a total of $230,000 would be $230,000. The king crab was $5 per fish, so 50,000 fish would be $250,000 per fish. Adding the king crab's $500,000, the spotted shrimp's $300,000, and the Maine lobster's $200,000. With just a wave of Jiang Hai's hand, he spent $28 million on these seedlings alone. Someone said, didn't they say to build an ecological environment first and then buy fish? Such a large-scale purchase of seedlings. Of course, it is impossible that there is no time to prepare. Originally, according to Iron Bull, Jiang Hai will give him a deposit first, and then he will prepare the seedlings. However, Jiang Hai was too lazy to talk nonsense. Since Ai Dehua said that this person is trustworthy, Jiang Hai directly signed the contract, and then Jiang Hai transferred all the money. Faced with Jiang Hai's tycoon style, Iron Bull was about to go crazy with joy. He had never met such a big customer before. With this deal, apart from the transportation, labor, and the original cost of the seedlings, he can earn at least 300,000 renminbi. This income of 300,000 renminbi is equivalent to several years of selling seedlings. Thinking of this, it would be strange if he was not happy. He immediately patted his chest and promised Jiang Hai that he will bring the best seedlings to Jiang Hai. At the same time, he will give Jiang Hai a ton of lobsters, a ton of bamboo prawns, a ton of top-grade Australian abalone, and 2 tons of Ghidorah oysters for free. According to Jiang Hai's calculation, these things added up to almost 100,000 renminbi. Finally, he will give him 5 tons of Arctic sweet prawns. Jiang Hai has to admit that Jiang Hai is very good at doing business. Just these things made Jiang Hai very happy. If he works harder, Jiang Hai will definitely buy from him in the future. This is because Jiang Hai will not only buy seedlings for a year, he does not plan to cultivate seedlings himself. If he wants to catch a big customer like himself, working hard is the only way out. However, after spending the money, Jiang Hai realized that the real money has not been spent yet. Because they bought too many fish, prawns, and crabs, Jiang Hai's fish farm's original need for food has increased rapidly. With the increase in food, the amount of food, water, and plants also increased rapidly. According to Ai Dehua's calculation, the amount of seaweed seeds was also increasing. Originally, he only needed about 100,000 renminbi of seeds, but now it seems that he has to increase it to 300,000 renminbi. Iron Bull was also in charge of contacting the Sea Bath Company, but the matters of the phone call discussion were left to Ai Dehua and Jiang Hai. When the person on the other side heard that it was a big deal worth 300,000 renminbi, he immediately drove over without hesitation. After the contract was signed, the balance of the 300,000 renminbi of seaweed seeds was paid. The person on the other side of the line laughed like crazy. He said that he would immediately go back and arrange a plane to plant the seeds. Within 3 days, he would help Jiang Hai finish planting them. In addition to the Sea Bath Company and the seaweed, Jiang Hai also needed to buy expensive fish, prawns, crabs, and other things to eat. In other words, cuttlefish, mullet, and all kinds of shellfish, which lived at the bottom of the marine food chain. According to Ai Dehua's calculation, it would cost about 2 million renminbi to buy them, and this was only the first batch, because these guys were just food. When the little guys in the fish farm grew up, they would naturally have to be fed. According to Ai Dehua, they could put in some bait and so on, which would save a lot of money. However, after some consideration, Jiang Hai felt that it would be better to let the fish hunt for food on their own. After all, Jianghu didn't want to feed the fish when they were in a wild state. However, according to what Jianghu said, Ai Dehua did some research and found that he needed to put in some fish every 3 months, which was a quarter. The first batch cost 3.2 million renminbi, and the subsequent batches were about the same. Although the fish were growing up, they were also dying. Therefore, the amount of fish food he put in did not fluctuate too much. Even so, Jianghu needed to invest 13 million renminbi in fish food for a year, plus the 3 million renminbi he spent today. It would be 16 million renminbi. This did not include the cost of the boats, the cost of oil, and the tax of the sea farm. If all of these were added together, it would be estimated to be 24 million renminbi. Thinking of this number, Edward Anderson was forced to be serious. According to the standard of 60% of the American red fish, 3 million fish would be 1.8 million mature fish. If the weather was good and there were no disasters or diseases, it would be 18 million renminbi if he could only earn 10 renminbi per fish. That would be a loss of 6 million renminbi. In other words, he had to earn more than 15 renminbi per fish to be able to recoup his investment. However, he also had to take into account the tax. Although he would receive subsidies later on to make up for most of the loss, he would still have to pay for it in the early stages. If it was not like what Iron Bull said, where he could earn 20 renminbi per fish when they were in their best condition, he might not be able to recoup his investment even after a year of good weather. Thinking of this, he could not help but shudder. No, I have to find a way to get the boss to recoup some money first. Otherwise, when the time comes, it will be really troublesome. Ai Dehua looked at the heartless Jianghu beside him and whispered in his heart. Boss, let's go fishing tomorrow. In the end, as if he had made up his mind about something, Edward Anderson turned his head and looked at Jianghu beside him. Hearing this, Jianghu could not help but be stunned. Fishing? Okay. Looking at Ai Dehua's serious face, Jianghu's eyes began to shine. Fishing seems like a good idea. Today's second update, continuously delivered. Recently, I've been looking at the Crown Princess. She seems to be poisoned. F***ck, I'm not that gay. Ahem, okay, the female lead is indeed quite beautiful. Chapter 110. Boss, you can't always rely on me. If you really want to develop the ocean, then it's time to recruit people. Standing on Jianghu's specially installed fishing boat, Philip said to Jianghu with a depressed face. His real identity is a cowboy, but he is always called a crew member by Jianghu. This is not a good thing because he hates the sea. Well, I know. I'm in a hurry today. I'll go recruit in 2 days. While fixing the fishing net according to Edward Anderson's instructions, Jianghu smiled and said to Philip, who was complaining. Let's hope so. Philip said helplessly as he patted his forehead. Originally, according to Edward Anderson's calculation, Jianghu shouldn't spend too much money to buy fish seedlings. After all, he only planned to buy codfish at first. Later, when Jianghu said that he wanted to raise valuable fish, he naively thought that he was going to raise American red fish. But who knew that after he went there, Jianghu's extravagant character instantly occupied the main position. In addition to raising American red fish, he also raised grouper, longzhu, and 4-year-old salmon. If it's just these, then it's fine, but what the hell is that king crab and spotted shrimp? And lobsters? Thinking of this, Edward Anderson's heart faintly ached. If the fish he raised this time really lost all his money, then Jianghu would be in trouble. Fortunately, there were a lot of fish in the original fishery. According to Edward Anderson's research, if all the fish and shrimps in the fishery were caught, it would be about $8 million. Of course, Jianghu wouldn't really let him catch all of them. Maintaining the marine ecosystem didn't just rely on the fish raised by Jianghu. However, catching some to subsidize the family was indispensable. At the same time, catching fish like this also left room for new fish seedlings to survive. After all, after 10 years of development, the fish in Jianghu's fishery was almost full. If he didn't catch some, when it was time to put in the aquatic plants and fish seedlings, those things wouldn't be enough for the playthings underwater. Therefore, after buying the fish seedlings and aquatic plants yesterday, Jianghu went home and prepared for the night. The next morning, Ai Dehua took him and Philemon, who was forcibly taken from the cowshed by Ai Dehua, out to sea on a fishing boat. Ai Dehua was indeed a top fisherman. The fishing boat he assembled wasn't small, and it was very good. Although it wasn't big, it ran fast on the sea and didn't sway. Jianghu liked it very much. At the same time, the most important thing was that there were many rooms here, and the decorations inside were very good. It could be foreseen that even if they went out to sea to fish in the future, it wouldn't be too difficult. At this time, although the three people on the boat were on the same boat, their moods were different. Jianghu was excited because this was the first time he went out to sea to fish. The last time he came to look for fish, it couldn't be counted as fishing. Ai Dehua was a little anxious. He was eager to earn back the first sum of money for his boss. As for Philemon, well, he didn't have any other thoughts besides muttering there. Bang! However, just as Philip was happily muttering to himself, there was a sudden explosion. On the calm sea surface, a huge figure suddenly appeared. The sea water instantly collapsed onto the boat, drenching Jianghu and Philip. Fortunately, the two of them had already changed into waterproof fishermen's clothes, otherwise, they would have been drenched like a drowned rat. Shark, shark. The explosion here attracted the attention of Jianghu and Philemon. In Philemon's eyes, a huge shark directly jumped out of the water, jumped straight to the sea surface, and then fell heavily into the water. Then it swam towards the side of the fishing boat while wagging its tail. This shark seemed to be about 4 meters long. Of course, compared to the fishing boat which was dozens of meters long, it was still small. But compared to humans, it was already twice as tall. Seeing the shark swimming close to the fishing boat, Philemon couldn't help but frown. For fishermen, having a shark following them wasn't good news, because sharks were also hunting fish. If his fishing boat put a net here, then the shark might eat some of the fish. Of course, it would be fine if it only ate some of the fish. The most frightening thing was that the shark would break through the school of fish. At that time, they wouldn't be able to catch any fish, which would affect the harvest. At the same time, the fishing net might also entangle the shark. If it was an ordinary reef shark, they might not care too much, but such a big shark could easily break the fishing net. One must know that a cheap fishing net would cost tens of thousands of dollars, and the expensive ones would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Therefore, for regular fishermen, sharks, especially large sharks, were not a good thing. Of course, catching sharks in the open sea and getting shark fins was another matter. It's okay, don't you recognize it? It's the shark-tiger shark that I raised. However, compared to Philemon's surprise, Jianghu was a lot calmer. Lying on the boat's bow and looking at the shark swimming below, Jianghu recognized it at a glance. It was the shark that he raised. He hadn't seen it for a while, and it seemed to have grown up in the sea. The effect of Jianghu's dragon blood wasn't ordinary. It was precisely because of the dragon blood that this shark sensed Jianghu's position as soon as Jianghu entered the sea. It quickly swam over, just like a kitten or a puppy, playing there. Seeing the shark's appearance, Jianghu couldn't help but walk to the boat's bow and pat the shark's head. Seeing Jianghu's action, Philemon was stunned. He had heard of raising dolphins and orcas, but what the hell was raising sharks? One must know that sharks were very stupid. They were cold-blooded and didn't recognize people. They didn't have domesticated DNA stored in their bodies. Therefore, almost no one raised them. Even if someone raised them, it would be impossible to pat their head. Originally, Philemon wanted to remind Jianghu. But when he saw the shark turn over in front of Jianghu, he became confused. F***ck, is this a shark or a dog? Don't you know that you can't feel anything when you turn over? Although it felt strange, even if the shark was stupid, at least it showed that it wasn't hostile to Jianghu. And Jianghu didn't let it turn over for too long and directly turned it back. Go under the sea and drive some fish into our fishing net. Patting the sand tiger shark's head, Jianghu said with a smile. After hearing Jianghu's words, the sand tiger shark shook its head and then drilled into the water, disappearing. Boss, you don't really think that it will help drive the fish away, do you? Obviously, Philemon also heard what Jianghu said to the sand tiger shark. When Jianghu returned to the deck, Philemon couldn't help but laugh. Who knows? Jianghu shrugged. He couldn't really say that he had the ability to communicate with animals. Of course, it was with animals that had absorbed his blood. In this way, the fishing boat sailed for about 5 minutes before Ai Dehua's voice came from the cabin, "Release the net." Hearing Ai Dehua's voice, Philemon immediately controlled the machine and released the fishing net from the back into the water. Fishing nets were used for different purposes, so naturally, they were made of different materials. In terms of usage, fishing nets can be divided into gill net, trawl net, purse seine net, net building net, and net spreading net. Different uses naturally lead to different materials. For example, the trawl net used by Jianghu was made of steel wire, nylon rope, and glass steel wire. Although the weight was reduced because of the addition of fiberglass, this net was still calculated by tons. This was not something that can be handled by human strength. Therefore, it must be controlled by a machine. There were 2 devices to control this machine. One was in the control room, which can be directly controlled from the control room, and the other was on the deck. Although Philip didn't know much about sailing, he was still very familiar with the operation of the net. With his skills, it didn't take long for the net to spread out behind Jianghu's fishing boat. Not long after the net spread out, Jianghu felt that the speed of the fishing boat suddenly decreased a bit. In the gaps of the net, Jianghu could see some fish jumping out of the water. "Boss, I have to admit that you have a lot of fish in your fishery." Although the net hadn't been released yet, Philemon could see it clearly. Jianghu did have a lot of fish. He originally thought that Ai Dehua was just joking when he said that there were tens of millions of fish here. But he didn't expect that this estimate was still conservative. Hearing Philip's words, Jianghu also smiled happily. He was lying on the boat's bow, looking at the fish net below. What's caught here weren't fish, but green franklins. After about an hour, Edward Anderson's voice came from the deck again, asking Jianghu and Philemon to pull up the net. Philemon didn't say anything and immediately went to operate the machine. As the ship slowed down, the net was gradually lifted out of the water by Philemon. Jianghu's net was a large one, and the gap between the net was 15 centimeters. In other words, almost all the fish below 30 centimeters would escape through the gap. But when the net was lifted, Jianghu couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh," because the tightened net in front of him was like a huge ball. The fish were squeezed into the middle of the net, which had a diameter of 4 to 5 meters. Jianghu really didn't catch fish, but franklins. "I'm here to recommend it. I'll push it to the shelves next week. Please support and collect it. It's my first time writing a farming story, so I'm very nervous." Chapter 111. 11.5 tons, that's about 30,000 fish. And this is just the fish from the upper level. If we catch more fish from the lower level, there should be more. Looking at the numbers displayed on the hydraulic screen, Philip couldn't help but smile. Then he controlled the robot arm to pull the fishing net into the empty fish pond. But at this time, there was no water in the pond. This was because the fish needed to be sorted. Some of the fish were very valuable, while some weren't. Naturally, their fates were different. After Philip put the 11 tons of fish into the pond, Ai Dehua came out of the cockpit and followed Jianghu and Philip into the fish pond. Now they needed to sort out the fish, put some valuable fish into the pool next to them, and throw away or kill some inedible things, such as water plants, jellyfish, sea snakes, and so on, which they had caught. Then they need to release some things back into the sea, such as turtles, sharks, seals, sea lions, fur seals, dolphins, and so on. These creatures, other than those who were targeted and killed by crazy people, were basically not targeted by ordinary fishing boats. According to Philemon, they wouldn't catch too many strange things in the upper layer of the fish. Sure enough, after the net was opened, in addition to aquatic plants, most of the fish were fish. There were all kinds of fish. The most conspicuous ones were a few huge red fish. These fish had sharp spikes on their bodies, making them look very scary. When Ai Dehua and Philip saw these fish, they immediately ran over and grabbed them by the gills before throwing them into the pond. What kind of fish are these? They look very festive. Jianghu then joined them. Holding a fish, Jianghu asked Philip. He was indeed very curious. This is the vermilion sebastes, a very valuable fish that can grow up to 1 meter. It originally lived in the Pacific Canada region, but later on, the Newfoundland fishery planted it directly, so we have it here. The price of this fish is very high. Not only can it be eaten, but it can also be raised as an ornamental fish. The one in your hand can be sold for about $2,000. Hearing Philip's introduction, Jianghu's eyes couldn't help but light up. A fish can be sold for $2,000? That's a big profit. But he was actually thinking too much. It would take 6 or 7 years for the fish to grow to the size of the one in Jianghu's hand. It's possible to raise this kind of fish to make money, but it's difficult to make a lot of money in batches. After knowing that the fish in his hand was so valuable, Jianghu became more careful and put the fish back into the pond. After putting the fish in the pond, Jianghu caught another red fish and was about to put it in the pond, but he was stopped by Philip. This kind of fish is the vermilion sebastes. It's valuable. The one you caught is a sea bass. It's not valuable. This kind of fish is also called Norway cod. It's a little more expensive than cod. It's not worth putting in. Hearing Philip's words, Jianghu was a little confused. To be honest, it was really difficult for him to distinguish the difference between these fish. Then Jianghu discovered that there were a lot of small red fishes among the fishes that they caught. But this time, he decided to ask Philip about these fishes before doing anything else. This is the golden-eye snapper. It's also a fish from the Pacific Ocean, but someone raised it here. It's probably to reproduce. This fish is also very valuable. The people in Japan like it very much. This is the redfin snapper. It's not valuable. This is the big eye snapper. It's okay, but just throw it here. We'll sort it later. Jianghu asked while picking. Then he found that the fish were really not ordinary. In his opinion, all the fish looked the same, but there were several, or even more than a dozen different classifications. And this was just the red ones. If you look at the normal color, it would be even more chaotic. There were sebastes, black-banded sebastes, black-eyed sebastes, filed sebastes. At least, Jianghu couldn't tell them apart. Just the above 3 kinds of fish, the price difference was like heaven and earth. The price of the black-banded sebastes was the lowest, about $6 per kilogram, while the black-eyed sebastes could be sold for $11. The difference between the two was $5. If Jianghu and the other fishermen didn't distinguish the fish clearly, the fish merchants wouldn't give them a share. They would treat them as black-banded sebastes. At that time, the fisherman, that is, the owner of the fish farm, Jianghu, would be the losers. 11.5 tons of fish, excluding kelp and water. There were about 10 tons of fish, nearly 30,000 fish. 30,000 fish seemed to be a lot, but in the hands of these professional fishermen, it was actually quite easy to sort them out. It took a little time to sort out the expensive fish, but it only took 1 or 2 seconds to sort out the less expensive fish. Therefore, about 2 hours later, they threw the useless sea snakes back into the sea and killed the jellyfish directly. In the absence of sea turtles, for seals, sea lions and other creatures to be released, Ai Dehua and Philip had already finished counting all the fish. This kind of work was a piece of cake for them. Let's take a break and then cast the second net. Seeing that the fish were all ready, and it was still early, Edward Anderson took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, lit 2 by himself, and handed one to Philip. Then he sat there and rested. Because they knew that Jianghu didn't smoke, they didn't give it to Jianghu. In fact, Jianghu had smoked a long time ago, probably when he was in junior high school. However, his family conditions didn't allow it, and he found that smoking wasn't addictive after a few years, so he quit. Although his financial conditions allowed it now, he didn't intend to pick it up again. It was good that he didn't smoke. "Come, boss, let me introduce you to the fish we caught." Seeing that they were smoking while Jianghu, the boss, didn't do anything, Philip came over with a smile and introduced the fish to Jianghu. Jianghu is the boss of a fishery. If he doesn't know what kind of fish it is, then it would be a bit strange. Speaking of which, he has been interested in these fish for a long time. When he heard Philip's words, he also went to the fish pond. "This is codfish, this is herring, and this is sea bass, the greediest fish in the sea, but it's also the easiest to catch. These are the ones I introduced just now: vermilion sebastes, lamb bream, black-striped sebastes, black-eyed sebastes, red sebastes, golden-eye sebastes, filehead sebastes, silver rock bass, brown trout you've seen before. It's a migratory fish. This is Atlantic salmon, just like trout. I guess this fish is about to produce seeds." Philip stood beside the fish pond and introduced more than 10 kinds of fish to Jianghu. Jianghu really couldn't tell them apart, so he could only memorize them. He had to admit that being a fisherman required a lot of experience and vision. Especially in a fishery like Jianghu's. After all, this fishery hadn't been fished for several years. Because he had never fished before, the fish in the fish farm here was very mixed, unlike those farmed fish farms. If one's vision wasn't good enough, they would really pick the worst ones. At this time, Jianghu couldn't help but feel lucky that he asked Ai Dehua for help. "I know this fish, lionfish." After introducing all the fishes that looked similar, Jianghu saw a few that looked different. These fishes had long spikes on their bodies. He remembered that he knew these fishes. They looked very flowery and had hard spikes on their bodies. He had seen them on TV before. This is sea bream." Hearing Jianghu's words, Philip hesitated for a moment and decided to tell Jianghu the truth. Almost the same." Hearing Philip's words, Jianghu was stunned for a moment. He took a closer look and found that they looked almost the same. Far from it. The scientific name of lionfish is sebastes. It belongs to the Scorpionidae family, just like the scarlet sebastes and black sebastes over there. The sea bream belongs to the sea bream family. Most importantly, lionfish is a harmful fish. Because of its toxicity, not many people like to eat it, so the price is much lower. We don't have lionfish here, it's a fish from the Pacific Ocean. We have sea bream here, so the price is very high. Hearing Jianghu's words, Philip smiled and said. Hearing Philip's words, Jianghu smiled a little awkwardly. It seems that his knowledge is really not enough. Okay, that's about it. Let's set the net again and then we'll sell them. This time, let's set the net deeper. Hearing that Philip had almost finished introducing the fish, Ai Dehua stood up and threw the cigarette butt into the trash can that was already prepared on the side of the ship. Then he returned to the cabin. As for Jianghu and Philip, they stayed on the deck and pushed the precious fish into a separate room next to them. The room was specially made to be humid. Inside the room, there was a sink that was specially made to store live seafood. Seafood was best when it was still alive. No matter how fresh it wasn't as delicious as live ones. Naturally, there was no live ones that could be sold at a high price. Of course, things like tuna would die once it left the water. As for the rest, the less valuable ones were pushed into the cold storage. There was also a layer of water here, but with so many fish squeezed together, they would naturally live if they could, and die if they couldn't, as long as they were still fresh when they were sent to the fish merchant. After everything was ready, Edward Anderson's voice was heard from the loudspeaker. Obviously, he had seen the existence of the fish through the sonar. Philip immediately manipulated the crane to put the fishing net into the water, but this time, the rope was longer. The fish they caught just now were from the upper layer, about 5 to 20 meters above the sea level. This time, their net was deeper. They wanted to catch fish between 20 to 30 meters. At this time, they were still on the continental shelf. 30 meters deep meant that they had already dragged the fish to the bottom of the sea. This time, they would catch more fish. The reason why they didn't choose to go this deep was that there were reefs in the area just now, but there weren't any in this area. Today's second update, continuously delivered. Chapter 112. Wow, it's much more than I expected. Looking at the constantly changing pressure data on the fishing net, Philip couldn't help but whisper. If the fishing net just now was sold, it could probably be sold for about $50,000. Of course, this trip to the sea, the diesel cost $20,000, plus the loss of the fishing boat, the loss of the fishing net, and so on. Adding it all together, the profit of this trip was only about $10,000. Plus the salary of the crew, there wasn't much left. Of course, this refers to the total income of this much. However, it was obvious that Jianghu's fishing area had more than just this amount of fish. If other fishermen knew about this, they would probably be overjoyed. Now that they had caught a second net of fish, they would make a pure profit. They would make as much profit as they could get. Now that they had caught a second net of fish, they would earn as much as they could get. The pressure is too much. Do you need to slow down? Looking at the reading on the fishing net getting higher and higher, Philip picked up the walkie-talkie and said to Ai Dehua in the cabin. Hearing Philip's words, Ai Dehua quickly replied. No need. Do you think the boss's boat is the same as our boat? Everything on this boat is the best, including the fishing net. Even a normal nylon fishing net can withstand this pressure, let alone ours. It's okay, but you have to pay attention. Call me when the reading reaches 300 feet per square meter. Listening to Ai Dehua's words, Philip couldn't help but be stunned. Although he knew that Jianghu was willing to spend money, to be honest, he still wanted to be a cowboy, so he didn't go with him when he loaded the boat. Now that he heard his brother-in-law's words, he was relieved. I'll go to the cabin to get a cup of coffee, do you want it? After learning that there was nothing here for the time being, Jianghu stood in the cold, then knocked on the window of the console next to him and said to Philip. It was only the beginning of January, the coldest time in Boston. Although Jianghu was born in the northeast, and the temperature was much colder than here, he still couldn't withstand the sea breeze. He wasn't like Philip. Perhaps for the convenience of operation, there was a special room at the console with a separate heater and glass that could be used to block the wind. Jianghu stood directly in the cold wind. Even with his physical fitness, he still couldn't withstand it. After confirming that there was nothing to worry about for the time being, he decided to go back and make some coffee to drink, even though he didn't like to drink coffee. But this thing does have the effect of warming the stomach. Oh, give me a cup too, thank you boss. Hearing Jianghu's words, Philip chuckled. Then Jianghu walked into the cabin. Jianghu's fishing boat was just like what he said when it was built. Although it looked like a fishing boat, from the interior decoration, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was a yacht. In the beginning, that person took a lot of money from Jianghu, and it seemed that he was quite serious. The fishing boat had been sent here for a while, and when it was just sent back, Jianghu went on board to take a look, so he was still very clear about the structure of the fishing boat. The entire fishing boat was divided into 2 floors. The first floor was the living area. The driver's cabin was at the front, and behind it was a large living room. The living room was about 30 square meters. There were sofas on both sides, a coffee table in the middle, a bar, a TV, and a refrigerator. The interior was decorated with wood and leather sofas, which made people feel very comfortable. Behind the living room was the living area. There were a total of 8 rooms and a master bedroom. Although it wasn't as luxurious as Jianghu's villa, it wasn't too bad. The room had a big bed, carpet, TV, refrigerator, sofa, wardrobe, and so on. There was even a separate bathroom and a separate toilet. Among the other 7 rooms, there were 3 master rooms. Although the decoration inside wasn't as good as the master bedroom, it wasn't too bad. The 3 master rooms also had a separate TV, wardrobe, but they were all one size smaller. The remaining 4 rooms were designed as a double room according to A.I. Dehua's original request. 2 beds were directly welded to the wall. Then there was a separate toilet, wardrobe, table, chair, and TV in the room. According to Edward Anderson, these 4 rooms were prepared for him and the future crew. The master bedroom was naturally for Jianghu to live in, and the guest bedroom was prepared for Jianghu's guests. As sailors, they naturally needed a place for sailors to sleep. Jianghu wasn't used to A.I. Dehua's clear hierarchy. He told A.I. Dehua that they could all be made into guest rooms, but A.I. Dehua didn't agree. Jianghu could only shrug his shoulders. In fact, sometimes it felt good to enjoy privileges. Behind the 8 rooms was the kitchen. This kitchen wasn't much worse than the kitchen in Jianghu's villa. It basically had everything, but it was different from the kitchen at home. Everything here couldn't be moved. They were all either on the ground or welded to the wall. After all, this was the sea. Even the Titanic could sink, so a 40-meter-long fishing boat was nothing. Therefore, it was never wrong to be careful. In the lower level of these residences was the part of the fishing boat that truly resembled a fishing boat. The lower level connected to the plate armor was 4 huge warehouses. 2 were cold storage, 1 was a live reservoir for the valuable fish, and 1 was a pure cold storage for frozen fish. The size of these 4 warehouses wasn't small. At least dozens of tons of fish wouldn't be a problem. Walking into the residential area, Jianghu went straight to the kitchen and used the coffee machine there to make coffee. He made 3 cups at once. He held 1 cup for himself and then took the other cup to the steering room. He didn't forget that A.I. Dehua hadn't drunk it yet. Walking into the cockpit, he saw A.I. Dehua driving the ship while looking at the underwater sonar and the pressure reading of the fishing net on the side of the cockpit. This was not the first time Jianghu had entered the cockpit, but he had to admit that he felt a headache every time he came in. These instruments and the like were really troublesome. If he hadn't properly studied them, just looking at these hundreds of buttons would make him feel nauseous. The various instruments, positioning, and broadcast made him feel a headache just by looking at them. "Hey, boss, thanks." Hearing the footsteps, A.I. Dehua looked back and saw Jianghu walking in with coffee. He also chuckled, then took his cup and continued to look at the data in front of him. "How's it going?" Jianghu certainly didn't understand, but at this time, as the boss, he had to ask and pretend to know. So Jianghu thought about it and said to Edward Anderson in front of him, "Not bad, the things in the net now are more than before. Although the sea here is not deep, there are a lot of good things. In 10 minutes, we can set up the net." Pointing to the shadow shown on the sonar and the pressure bar from the net, Edward Anderson said with a smile. But just as he was joking, his face suddenly changed because 2 black bars suddenly floated over on the sonar map. According to the sonar display, these 2 black bars were estimated to be about 4 meters long. These 2 black bars were rushing in the direction of the fishing net at this time. "What's this? A big fish?" Looking at the reading displayed on the sonar, even A.I. Dehua was a little confused. At this time, the figure in front of him didn't seem to notice and plunged into Jianghu's fishing net. This huge impact even made the boat shake a little, and at this time, the reading of the fishing net increased a lot in an instant. Seeing this, A.I. Dehua immediately grabbed the walkie-talkie and was about to ask Philemon to set up the net. His 6th sense told him that he caught a big fish, but before he could say anything, Philemon had already set up the fishing net on the deck. Philemon had been paying attention to the pressure of the fishing net since the beginning. When the pressure of the fishing net suddenly rose from 220 to 270, he knew that it was either a big fish or a reef. No matter what, he needed to get the fishing net up immediately. At this time, Jianghu didn't have time to drink coffee. He immediately ran out of the cabin and came to the surface. A.I. Dehua also slowly stopped the boat and came to the deck. When the 2 arrived on the deck, Philemon had already controlled the crane to pull up the fishing net. The fishing net, which was bigger than the previous one, was slowly being lifted out of the sea. At this time, a huge sailfish was constantly struggling in the fishing net. Its sharp mouth had already stretched out of the fishing net. Looking at this big guy, Jianghai's mouth unconsciously opened. This was the first time he saw a sailfish in his life, and it looked really fierce. Bang, bang. At this time, on the sea level beside the boat, a shark also jumped out of the sea. Jianghai looked back and knew that this shark was his pet, Big Idiot. He didn't expect that he just casually said that he was going to catch a fish, and it really caught a sailfish. Boss, we're rich this time. This fish alone can be sold for $100,000. Philemon, who was controlling the crane to slowly move towards the pool, couldn't help but shout loudly when he saw the fish. $100,000? Hearing Philemon's words, Jianghai couldn't help but swallow. It seems that raising fish is really a profitable job. A fish can be sold for $100,000? He already felt that his breathing was a little rapid. Could it be that he had never thought about the problem of whether he could raise this fish? As for Ai Dehua, when he looked at the fish, his eyes were also shining, but when he saw Jianghai's sand tiger shark, his eyes shone even brighter. He didn't expect Jianghai's pet to be so awesome. I have to go back to Chengdu in the next 2 days, so I'll post it on time. If there's a mistake, please leave me a message in the book review and comments section. I'll sort it out when I come back. Finally, I'll ask for your support and collection. Chapter 113. Hua. Under Philemon's control, the large bag of fish was then placed into the pool next to it. However, as soon as it was put in, the huge sailfish moved vigorously, hoping to leave the pool. Unfortunately, it thought too much. Ai Dehua was already prepared. He rushed over, picked up a huge blanket, and wrapped it around its body. Then Jianghai and Philemon also ran over, picked up the big fish that was almost 3 meters long, and walked into the reservoir next to it. The scientific name of this fish was Atlantic blue marlin, but although it was called a marlin, it was a sailfish. This fish could grow up to 5 meters and weigh 1,800 kilograms, which was more than 1 ton, nearly 2 tons. Of course, this fish was not so big. If this fish was so big, not to mention Jianghai's big idiot, Jianghai, and the others would not be able to lift it. Although the fish was struggling, Jianghai estimated it was about 600 kilograms when they lifted it. Although it was not particularly heavy, it was enough for the 3 men to use all their strength. Fortunately, Jianghai was there. Although he was not qualified to be a sailor, he was strong enough. He directly picked up the fish, came to the reservoir, and put the fish in. Watching the fish swimming in the water, Jianghai and the others were happy. If this fish died, it would be worthless. Such a big blue marlin, if it died, would only be worth 30,000. Philemon shouted 100,000 because it was alive. Marlin, sailfish, and tuna, these expensive fish, were basically not sold alive. Even in aquariums, there were few marlin or sailfish on display because these fish were too difficult to catch. The swimming speed of these fish was very fast. Fishing boats could not catch up, so fishing boats with trawlers would definitely not be able to catch them. As for the seine fishing boats, the speed of the net was too slow. Even if they caught them, these fish could use their speed to drill out from the other end of the fishing net. Even if they could not, their impact could break most of the fishing net. If Philip hadn't set up the net immediately, the fish would have slipped away and even destroyed the net. In this way, Jianghai and the others would suffer a great loss. A new net would be broken after just one net. That would be extremely tragic. Therefore, 90% of the way to catch these 3 types of fish was to rely on fishing. However, there was a big problem after fishing it up. The fish was too big and struggled too hard. Although it was only 1 person, 3 to 5 men wouldn't be able to hold it down. If it wasn't for Jianghai, Ai Dehua and Philip might have died. In addition, these fish needed to swim continuously in order to breathe. They would die soon after leaving the sea. So basically, when such fish were caught, they would be killed and made into ice. But Jiang Hai's fishing boat was different. His reservoir was filled with water from the outside. In other words, when the boat was sailing, the water in the reservoir would constantly change. This way, the fish wouldn't die. At least, it was enough to ensure that they were still alive when they were sold. We're rich this time. Boss, remember to give us a bonus. Looking at the blue marlin in the water, Philip's mouth would have curled into a smile if it weren't for his ears. He immediately said to Jiang Hai, "Of course. 10,000 per person. It's a good start. Not to mention the other fish, this blue marlin alone was worth 100,000. How could Jiang Hai be stingy with the money?" He waved his hand and said to the two people beside him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Philip and Edouard Anderson smiled even more happily. Then, everyone returned to the deck, where there was still a lot of fish to deal with. As for Jiang Hai, he deliberately caught a sea bass about half a meter long and went below the deck. The biggest contributor to catching this big guy was Big Fool in the sea. Jiang Hai had to reward him no matter what, right? When Jiang Hai came over, Big Dumb was also very excited. Obviously, this time it was a blind cat that hit a mouse. Fortunately, this was within the range of Jiang Hai's fish farm, and Jiang Hai's fish farm accidentally bumped into it. Otherwise, with Blue Spear's speed, it was estimated that in less than 10 minutes, Big Dumb would not even be able to see the waves behind the opponent's butt. It should be known that this kind of fish was very expensive. Under such circumstances, there were naturally many people who wanted to catch it. However, under such circumstances, the World Conservation Organization did not list it as an endangered species and did not restrict its capture at all. This showed how difficult it was to catch this kind of fish. One had to admit that it was necessary to rely on others to catch this kind of fish. This is your reward, come out and play. Walking in front of Big Fool, Jiang Hai deliberately took out his hand from his glove, then took out a small knife, cut a wound, and squeezed a drop of blood from it. In the past month, he did not have many opportunities to bleed, so his scales were a lot longer. Today's drop of blood was not very important to him. After dripping the blood into the mouth of the sea bass, he stuffed the fish into Big Fool's mouth. As soon as the fish entered Big Fool's mouth, Big Fool knew that it was a good fish. He did not even bite it and directly swallowed it. Then, after a splash in front of Jiang Hai, he went to the bottom of the sea. The energy in Jiang Hai's blood was too strong, so Big Fool needed to digest it well. After Big Fool left, Jiang Hai also returned to the deck. This time, he found that there were more things in the pool, which meant that there were more expensive things. When Jiang Hai went over to take a look, his eyes instantly lit up. Not to mention other things, just the dozens of large and small lobsters were enough to make Jiang Hai excited. F***CK, this is more than 10 kilograms. Walking into the pool, Jiang Hai grabbed a huge lobster. No, about 8 or 9 kilograms, but such a big lobster can be considered a shrimp king. It can be sold for at least $2,000 or $3,000. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Philip said with a smile. Such a big lobster is indeed not small, but not particularly big, it is still within the acceptable range. Only $2,000 or $3,000? Hey, your lobsters here are too cheap, forget it, today's fish is good, let's eat this guy tonight. Looking at the lobster waving its big pincers, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Eat? Hee, only the boss is willing to eat? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ai Dehua and Philip looked at each other, and then Ai Dehua said with some helplessness. They really don't know whether Jiang Hai is here to make money or to enjoy life. In fact, for Jiang Hai, he came here to make money and to enjoy life, which is very good. Then everyone began to divide and pack. Compared with the last time, there were more fish and less other things. This time, other things accounted for almost 70% of the fish. Jiang Hai's seabed still has a lot of things. Dozens of large and small lobsters, all the lobsters less than 2 kilograms, that is, 1 kilogram, were thrown back to the bottom of the sea. In the United States, lobsters are also divided into different grades. Every half a pound is a grade. In the market, the smallest lobster was 1 pound, and was called chicken. This was the smallest grade, but it couldn't be sold for much money. The bigger ones were called quarters, and the bigger ones were called seects. The biggest ones were more than 2 pounds, and were called jumbo. Those without pincers were called cull. This kind of lobster was worthless. About 1/3 of these lobsters were less than 1 kilogram. Even if they were all picked up, there were still more than 50 lobsters to be sold. These lobsters alone are not a small income. In addition to the lobsters, this net also had a lot of shrimps and crabs. In the previous net, there were almost no shrimps, but in this net, there were almost 100 kilograms of Arctic sweet shrimps. Looking at this, Jianghai's mouth was watering. He liked to eat these shrimps the most. In addition to these shrimps, there were also a lot of crabs, including swimming crabs and walking crabs. These things also weighed more than 100 kilograms. If Jianghai kept these things, it would be enough for him to eat for a year. In addition to the lobsters, crabs, and shrimps, there were also a lot of shellfish. But basically, these shellfish were thrown back into the sea by Audiobook and Philip. These shellfish could be used to raise fish in the future, so they wouldn't go to waste. Most importantly, they didn't eat these things. If it wasn't for Jianghai's sharp eyes, they would have thrown back about 10 kilograms of shellfish. In addition to these shellfish, there were also some small octopus and small squid that were thrown back. These were all bait for raising fish in the future. In addition to the feed, there were also some broken stones, corals, and reefs. There were also a lot of fish, but the fish that was caught the most was the flounder. Perhaps not many people knew about the flounder, but when it came to flatfish, they would know about it. This kind of flat fish lived at the bottom of the sea. When the net was scraped, all kinds of flounders could be found everywhere, big and small. Just like before, the small ones were thrown away and the valuable ones were put away. One of them was more than a meter long. According to Philip, this kind of flounder was called the Atlantic flounder, which was the same kind of fish as the halibut of the Pacific Ocean. It's just that they lived in different places. This kind of fish could grow up to 2.5 meters, weigh more than 300 kilograms, and live for 50 years. This flounder was about 1.2 meters long, meaning that it had lived for more than 10 years. But if it was sold, it would be worth a lot of money. After sorting out this mess of fishes, even Jianghai's 4 big warehouses were almost full. After all, these fishes didn't need to be put in the cold storage, they were enough to be chilled. After 2 nets, the 3 warehouses were almost full. Audiobook turned the steering wheel and the fishing boat headed towards the distant Boston area. This time, they had a lot of good fishes. If they were to sell them in Winthrop, they might not be able to fetch a good price. They could only sell them in some big cities. After sailing for more than an hour, a vague fishing port appeared in front of Jianghai and the others. At this time, there were many boats going in and out of the fishing port. It could be seen that these people were fishermen. I haven't been here for a few days, please forgive me. Chapter 114. Wow, there are so many people selling fish. Jianghai said in surprise as he looked at the crowd coming in and out. It's only January, it's still the coldest time, so there aren't many people selling fish here. If it was October, there would be several times more people here. Hearing Jianghai's words, Philip, who was standing next to Jianghai, also said with a smile. Hearing his words, Jianghai couldn't help but nod in surprise. Looking around, there were already thousands of people in the fish store. If there were several times more, wouldn't there be tens of thousands of people selling fish every day? It seems like the fish store is also very profitable. While Jianghai and Philip were chatting, the fishing boats slowly entered the fish store. Most of the fishing boats near the sea were more than 20 meters long, and those that were more than 30 meters long could go fishing. Of course, the real big boats were seine fishing boats, the big ones were 70, 80 meters, and even more than 100 meters long. But in terms of trawlers, Jianghai's fishing boat was already the biggest one. After arriving at the fish store, this giant naturally attracted a lot of people's attention. "Hey, Turner, didn't you become a cowboy?" Among the people who noticed the fishing boat, many of them were from Winthrop. They knew that Philip had the skills of a fisherman, but he insisted on becoming a cowboy. Who said that a cowboy can't fish? It's really strange. Hearing the words of the people below, Philip also shouted from the fishing boat. Hearing his voice, Jianghai also smiled. If he didn't force Philip to come here, he probably wouldn't be willing to be a fisherman. "Okay, Philip, don't quarrel with these guys. Go to the fish store and tell the manager how many fish we have here, then I'll line up here." At this time, Edward Anderson, who was inside, heard Philemon's words. He stretched his head out and said to Philemon, "Nothing can be accomplished without rules." No matter how big the ship was, it was inevitable to follow the rules. First come, first served, this was a rule that everyone in the United States abided by. If someone randomly cut the queue, it might really cause a conflict. In the United States, other than ladies first, there was no one who had priority. When it comes to selling fish, even ladies do not have priority. According to these fishermen, even if the President of the United States comes, he will have to line up outside. Hearing Ai Dehua's words, Philip nodded and went down to the first floor. When the boat approached the pier, he directly jumped off the boat and ran towards the fish shop in the distance. As for Jianghai, he sat on the plate armor and looked at the scenery outside. To be honest, Jianghai really didn't have the qualifications to be a rich man. Because since he came to Boston, except for the time when he bought a boat, he didn't have the time to shop here. This was one of the oldest cities in the United States. Now, looking at the scenery on the boat, Jianghai felt a little refreshed. In fact, it wasn't that he didn't want to go shopping, it was that he didn't know how to go shopping, and there was no one to accompany him. There were only 2 young people in his manor, but whether it was Harriman or Belle Lester, they were both very busy. Every day, they were in a hurry. How could they have time to go shopping with Jianghai? Every morning, when they woke up, they had to feed the cows, clean up the cow dung, and check if the cows were injured or sick. When they finally had some free time, they had to patrol the fence of the manor to see if there were any broken ones. Whether there were people or wild animals sneaking in, they had to deal with them. Most importantly, cowboys didn't have a day off, so they were so busy every day. This made Jianghai a little speechless. At the same time, he didn't know why he would go out on the streets. It was boring to go out by himself without anyone to accompany him. He didn't even have a man, let alone a girl. Sometimes, when he wanted to buy clothes or food, he would go straight to Winthrop. There was everything there. If it didn't work, he could also shop online. The Amazon in the United States, eBay, and so on were not worse than the online shopping websites in China. Even the after-sales service was better. So even if he went to Boston to look at the scenery, he was too lazy to move. It's too boring. Looking at the boat slowly moving forward and the scenery on both sides of the river constantly moving backward, Jianghai whispered. However, although it was boring, he was too lazy to change Jianghai. He had to admit that sometimes, the more a person stayed, the more lazy they would be to move. This was especially true for young people like Jianghai. He was not willing to come into contact with the outside world. Coupled with the fact that he was not short of money and had his own small circle, he was getting lazier and lazier. Although there was no redeeming feature to this, he was still very happy. While Jianghai was looking at the scenery there, many people were looking at him. As the saying goes, you are looking at the scenery, and the people who are looking at the scenery are looking at you. Of course, looking at Jianghai was completely different from the original meaning of this sentence. Originally, this sentence referred to looking at beautiful women. Even if they weren't beautiful, they had to be handsome. However, Jianghai wasn't a beautiful woman, nor was he handsome. Strictly speaking, Jianghai was just a very curious manor lord. These people were looking at Jianghai, not at him, but at the money behind him. Although Boston was located on the East Coast, there were many Chinese people. It could be said that there was no one here who knew Jianghu. However, many of them knew Philip and Ai Dehua. Naturally, they had heard that the two of them had joined Green Forest. They had also heard that Green Forest had been bought by a young Chinese boss. So now, when they looked at Jianghu, they felt that Jianghu should be the boss. He doesn't seem to be anything special. He doesn't look like a rich person. Nowadays, Chinese people are rich. You don't understand. Maybe he is the son of a senior official or the child of a rich businessman. He looks a little short. His body and bones are okay, but he is a little too white. He doesn't look like a man who fights in the sea at all. Instead, he looks like a Xiao Bai. Is this a billionaire? Hee hee. Looking at Jianghu, these fishermen whispered. Of course, their so-called whispers still passed into Jianghu's ears. For what they said, Jianghu could only twitch his mouth. He had long been used to being talked about like this. Thinking back, when he married his wife, his ex-wife, there were a lot of people talking about him. They said that he was a lucky bastard and that he was a freeloader. But in that kind of environment, he could only endure it. The words of those people were 100 times worse than what these fishermen were saying. Although these fishermen didn't say anything good, at least they said that he was white. Well, in Jianghu's ears, this was a good thing. While the crowd was talking, Jianghu's fishing boat slowly moved forward. It didn't take long before they arrived at the entrance of the fish store. Philip and the others had been waiting for a long time. They immediately jumped onto the fishing boat with a group of helpers and then went to the room where the fish were kept. When they walked in, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. It really is the Atlantic blue spear. Kid, you're rich. One of the big men saw the Atlantic blue spear in the pond and punched Philip's chest. His face was full of excitement. It's not me who's rich, it's our boss who's rich. Well, don't talk too much. Hurry up and move these things down. Hearing this man's words, Philip laughed and said. Hearing his words, several people had already pulled the hook of a crane into the cabin and moved the pond out of the cabin. When the pond was moved into the fish store, the onlookers couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Wow, it's the Atlantic blue spear. It's a living Atlantic blue spear. Seeing the huge figure in the pond, the other fish of the same size instantly became a foil. Everyone's eyes were focused on the Atlantic blue spear. Wow, you're really lucky. You can even catch such a guy. At this time, an old man walked out from the fish shop. This old man looked to be in his 50s or 60s, but he was still very healthy. Looking at Edward Anderson, who had stopped the boat and jumped down, the old man walked over first, patted his shoulder and said to him. This is all thanks to our boss. He's a lucky guy. Philip and Ai Dehua knew that the reason they were able to catch the blue marlin was because of Jianghu's sand tiger shark. If it weren't for the shark, then it would have been impossible to catch the blue marlin. Now that he heard the old man's words, Ai Dehua naturally wouldn't take the credit. Lucky guy, this fish is great, very great. After all, it's a living Atlantic blue spear, so I'll give you $100,000 for this fish alone. Of course, the fish wouldn't be worth so much if it were sold by the caddy. After all, there was a limit to how expensive fish could be. Even the legendary bluefin tuna wasn't worth $100,000. But this blue spear was alive, after all. If there were connections, this fish could be sold to some rich people as a pet, or sent to an aquarium. Whether it was the government of the United States or those rich people, they would be happy to buy a living Atlantic blue spear for $100,000 or even $100,000. Of course, he had to have a way to get it. Otherwise, Jianghu could sell the fish. Deal, look at the other fish. We have a good harvest today. After shaking hands with the old man in front of him, Jianghu said with a chuckle. After hearing Jianghu's words, the old man said that there was no need to rush. Then he directly transferred $100,000 to Jianghu. After Jiang Hai confirmed the transfer, the old man hurriedly asked someone to send the fish away. After all, a dead Atlantic blue spear was worthless, and he didn't want to lose money. Chapter 115. The rest of the fish is 76,212, the shrimp is 4,561, the crab is 12340, and the lobster is 10829. Altogether, the total is 103,942. Do you want to transfer the money, or? After solving the problem of the blue gun, the old man immediately arranged for someone to send the blue gun away. Jiang Hai didn't ask where it would be sent, but listening to the old man's phone call, if there was no accident, it should be a Western restaurant in New York. It seems that someone is preparing to treat the blue gun as the treasure of their restaurant. After solving the problem of the blue gun, the other fish, shrimp, crab, and lobster were all put online and began to be weighed. However, during the weighing, Jiang Hai deliberately took out the largest lobster, a lot of Arctic sweet shrimps, and some crabs. These were all things that he wanted to eat. In addition to these things, this trip's harvest was also quite rich. Although Jiang Hai didn't have any other choice, he still had a lot of things to eat. Transfer 80,000 to my bank account, and give me the rest in cash. Hearing this, Jiang Hai chuckled and said to the old man. If Jiang Hai wanted cash, the old man might have to raise some money, but Jiang Hai only wanted 20,000 in cash, and he had that. He immediately pulled all the fish and shrimps to the back and gave Jiang Hai $3,942. Jiang Hai put away the change and gave the remaining 20,000 to Ai Dehua and Philip, $1 for each person. Wow, thank you, boss. Looking at the brand new dollar bills in front of him that still smelled of ink, Philip's eyes immediately turned green. After all, it had been a long time since he had seen bundles of dollar bills. Most importantly, this money was a reward, more of a gift, and didn't need to be taxed. It was like money picked up on the street. Did you have to pay taxes after picking up money on the street? Don't joke around. Jiang Hai gave them the cash because he had considered this aspect. Thank you, boss. Although he was a little worried about the fish farm's harvest, Ai Dehua still accepted the money that Jiang Hai gave him. He looked happily at the dollar bills in front of him. This money was enough to cover his work for several months. Work hard. You won't be short of money in the future. Looking at the two's excited expressions, Jiang Hai also smiled and stuffed the rest of the change into his pocket. He didn't have the habit of carrying a wallet when he went out. His clothes had many pockets that were specially used to store money, keys, and so on, so when the money was stuffed in, it instantly bulged. Lucky lad, if you have any good goods in the future, send them to me. I won't treat you badly. Seeing that Jiang Hai was done, the old man behind him walked over and handed Jiang Hai a business card. The mayor of Winthrop had told Jiang Hai that generally speaking, people in the United States did not give out business cards, but there were exceptions. For example, someone selling insurance, or like this old man, collecting fish. The front of this business card was printed with his phone number, and the back of the business card was printed with the price of various precious fish species. Of course, the price of fish would fluctuate every day. But the general price was about the same. Jiang Hai nodded with a smile and put the business card away. Then, he jumped onto his fishing boat, and the three of them left the fish farm. But although they left, the fishermen still saw the money they had just made. It was impossible to say that these fishermen's eyes weren't green with envy. Some of these fishermen didn't even make $200,000 a year. It could be said that fishermen with an annual income of $200,000 were very rare in the entire fishing industry in the United States. After deducting taxes, expenses, and a bunch of other miscellaneous money, these fishermen's annual income was probably only tens of thousands of dollars. When they were lucky, they could be considered middle class, but when they were unlucky, they couldn't even be considered middle class. Now that they saw the money Jiang Hai made, it would be strange if they weren't green with envy. After seeing Jiang Hai and the others leave, many of them looked at each other. Of course, they didn't want to kidnap Jiang Hai, but wanted to. Thanks to you guys today, we didn't have lunch at noon. Let's go back and eat lobster at night. What do you want to eat? It's my treat today. Because there was no need to go offline, Jianghu didn't sit on the deck. Instead, he sat in the living room. Philemon sat across from him. As for Ai Dehua, he continued to sail the boat and look at the scenery outside. On the way back, Jianghu asked with a smile. Wow, today is really my lucky day. Philemon exclaimed when he heard that Jianghu not only gave him a bonus, but also wanted to treat him to a meal. If you like it so much, come and help me. You'll make a lot of money. Hearing Philemon's exclamation, Edward Anderson said with a smile, but after hearing his words, Philemon immediately shook his head. Forget it, I don't want to float on the sea anymore. As long as the cattle in the manor are raised well, I don't believe that I'll make less money than on the boat. He was quite confident in Jianghu's cattle. Since the last time they killed a cow, they had eaten almost all of its meat, so they killed another one a few days ago. As a result, after this cow was killed, even Robbins was shocked and didn't know what to say. The slaughter rate reached 70% this time. After removing the bones, the head, and the offal, a total of 504 kilograms of meat was left. Nearly half of the meat was marbled, and the premium grade beef accounted for 30% of the total. That's 75 kilograms of premium grade beef, 166 pounds. According to the price of $350 per pound, this meat alone is worth $58,100. In addition to this meat, there are other types of meat, which added up to the price of this meat. Jianghu and the others went all out to catch a blue spear for 100,000, and it had to be alive. A beef cow could also be sold for 100,000. How many blue guns are there in the sea? They can't be seen or touched. How many beef cows are there in Jianghu's manor? 20,000, which one is the big one? He can't be wrong. However, since Jianghu has decided to develop the fishing industry, he naturally can't let the industry earn tens of millions or even millions a year. His goal is naturally to surpass 100 million, and the way to surpass 100 million is in his body. Okay, let Philip choose what to do. Have you thought about what to eat? Italian food or German food? Or what to eat? Interrupting the endless conversation between the two, Jianghu asked Edward in the driver's seat. Hearing Jianghu's words, Philip smiled and said, I don't care about eating, I'm happier with $10,000 on me than you treating me to a meal. The most important thing right now is to recruit people. Hearing Jianghu, Philip smiled and said to Jianghu, recruiting? Hearing what he said, Jianghu asked a question in a strange way. Yes, recruit people. Hearing Jianghu's puzzled words, Ai Dehua also said seriously. Then he told Jianghu why they want to recruit people. In fact, the main reason is that money moves people's hearts. With the development of the ocean over the years, the ocean itself is naturally getting worse and worse. The coral reefs that could be seen everywhere in the past are now rare, and the originally rich marine fish have become less and less with the transition of fishing over the years. In recent years, the life of fishermen near Boston has also been going downhill because of the transition of development. Everyone knows that the green forest has never caught fish, so everyone only suspected that there might be more fish in the fishing grounds of the green forest, but after all, it is private territory and no one has confirmed it, so they are not willing to take the risk of being caught and fined to fish there. But now it is different. Jianghu has already shown the fish there. Even if they can't catch blue marlin in one fishing trip, the $100,000 of fish is still very tempting to these people. Under such circumstances, some people may take the risk. If someone steals, it will be a loss for Jianghu. After all, every fish in that sea area belongs to Jianghu. If someone steals it, then the one who suffers the loss is Jianghu. This is the most unforgivable in a capitalist country. But if Ai Dehua is the only one, he can patrol during the day, but what about at night? There will always be some missed time. Before he showed the reserves of the fish, he could be more casual, but now he can't. So in AI Dehua's view, the most important thing at the moment is to recruit people. Oh, that makes sense. Recalling the shining eyes of the fisherman when he left on the fishing boat, Jianghu nodded. It should be like this. After thinking about the problem of the fisherman, Jianghu thought about the problem of patrolling. Do you think we should buy a plane? Wouldn't it be faster to patrol like this? After hesitating, Jianghu said to AI Dehua in front of him. AI Dehua also nodded when he heard what Jianghu said. It's naturally best to have a plane, but it's a bit wasteful to use a plane for patrolling now. The price of aviation gas is not cheap, but when we raise fish in the future, we need to use a plane to feed them. I originally planned to tell you next month, but since you mentioned it now, I think we should also put this on the agenda. AI Dehua turned his head and slowly talked to Jianghu. According to AI Dehua, they need at least one plane, but it's best to have two. One can be used for farming, which can be used to spread bait and the like, and one can stay on the sea for a long time. It's better to drive away the fishing boats that enter Jianghu's territory. Hearing AI Dehua's words, Jianghu also expressed that he understood. As for the people who can fly the plane, they don't need to care too much. Anyway, they are going to recruit people. When the time comes, they will recruit people who can fly the plane. But the problem now is, where to buy the plane. First update in the middle of the night, please support Little Faye and collect more. Please, everyone. Chapter 116. We're here. Patting the car door, AI Dehua turned his head and said to Jianghu, who was sleeping in the back seat. We're here. Hearing AI Dehua's words, Jianghu also rubbed his eyes, then sat up in a daze. Then, he stretched and looked at the scenery outside the window. At this time, what caught his eyes was a big ship. It was about 100 meters long and 30 meters wide. Compared with ordinary ships, this thing is obviously not an ordinary fishing boat or cruise ship, but more like a warship. In fact, it's not just like a warship, it's a warship that has been decommissioned for a long time, and all the weapons have been dismantled. Obviously, this ship has been scrapped for a long time. It's just parked next to the port. There are many colorful lights on it. Under the illumination of the night, it flashed a different light. A sign hung in the middle of the ship, Sea Warrior. It seems that this is the name of this ship. It's really not small. After opening the door, Jianghu jumped out, looked at the big ship in front of him, and muttered to himself. On the other side, Edward Anderson also jumped out of the car. This morning, they went fishing and caught 2 nets to sell. When they finished selling, it was about 2:00 in the afternoon. Originally, according to Jianghu, he was going to invite AI Dehua and Philip out to eat, but AI Dehua told him that today was not the time to go out and play. Jianghu's group first drove the ship back to Jianghu's port, then the 3 of them moved the remaining fish back to the residential area. After all, they came out to fish once, so naturally, it was impossible to sell all of it. After all, Luo Binsi also needed to eat fish. Instead of buying it, it was better to eat the fish they caught themselves. So the fish they sold accounted for about 95% of it. There were more than 100 pounds of fish left, and each family could share a dozen pounds, which was enough to eat for a while. However, compared to the fish, shrimp, crabs, and most of the lobsters were Jianghu's special delicacies, but there was still a problem. He didn't know how to cook. After these fish got off the ship, if they were not dealt with immediately, they would die. So Jianghu had been busy cleaning up these fish since they moved them over. When all the work was done, it was already 5:00 in the afternoon, and the sky was already dark. So after everyone had a seafood meal at home, Ai Dehua brought Jianghu to recruit people. Originally, Jianghu wanted to let Luo Binsi and Philemon follow him, but where there were people, there was competition. Just like in Winthrop, no, it should be said that in the United States, there was always competition between land and sea. Cowboys looked down on sailors, and sailors looked down on cowboys. So in a sense, sailors would not go to cowboys' bars, and cowboys naturally would not go to sailors' territory. This could be seen from Ai Dehua and Luo Binsi. They were all from the same town. If it were not because he knew Ai Dehua when he recruited Philemon, and Philemon was not a pure cowboy, Jianghu might not be able to recruit this person. They usually did not even treat each other as friends. Even in the manner, they worked for Jianghu. Usually, Luo Binsi and the others would never look for Ai Dehua and the others to play. Of course, when they gathered together, at least on the surface, it was still very harmonious. It was precisely because of this that now that Jianghu wanted to recruit sailors, Luo Binsi and the others were a little embarrassed. In the end, Ai Dehua came forward and explained it. Jianghu understood that he was a little unreasonable just now. But after knowing it, he naturally would not force them to come over, so only he and Ai Dehua came over. The owner of this bar is called Ariel. The owner of this sea warrior is called Al Claude. You can call him Al. He participated in World War II and was a major in the Navy before he retired. This destroyer was the ship he commanded at that time. It once attacked Midway Island, but was later bombed at Pearl Harbor. Although it was later salvaged, it was seriously damaged. After World War II, he retired along with this ship. Later, he made a fortune in business. More than 10 years ago, when the government sold this ship, he bought it and transformed it into a bar. This is also the favorite entertainment place of all the sailors around here. After Jianghu got out of the car, Ai Dehua also parked the car and jumped out. He walked in front of Jianghu and looked at the giant ship in front of him. He introduced it to Jianghu. Then let's go in and have a look. Hearing Ai Dehua's words, Jianghu also smiled, and then the two walked to the big ship. Obviously, sailors were richer than cowboys. Even the Navy earned more than the Army. The customers here were richer and more willing to spend money. Naturally, the hardware here was better. Not only was the main body outside a battleship, but when you walked in, you would find that the decoration inside was also a different world. Although it could not be compared to those top hotels, Western restaurants, and bars. But it was at least a few streets away from Old Tony's cowboy song. The decoration inside was almost as good as Jianghu's residential area. It was understandable. If Old Tony's cowboy song was decorated like this, it was unknown whether Old Tony would go bankrupt or not. But at least the cowboys would not be willing to go there. They usually herded cows roughly and drank roughly. A place that was too stylish was not suitable for them. On the other hand, the sailors earned even more. Although they were all rough men, their American genes made them more willing to enjoy life when they were free. He was willing to spend more money. If the service they received was the same, it would be strange if they did not curse on the streets. Of course, in Winthrop, there were also some small bars for sailors like Cowboy Song. But the attraction there was not as big as this one. Here, just entering the door did not require identification. Ordinary children were not allowed to enter. If it was not for Jianghu following Ai Dehua, he would not be able to enter. Walking into the bar, Jianghu found that it was really far from Cowboy Song. And it seemed that it was not just a bar. As soon as he walked into the hall, Jianghu saw a notice on the side, telling Jianghu about the entertainment facilities on the ship. This ship was divided into 3 floors. The lowest floor was a disco. It was very lively. Jianghu stood on the ground and felt that the ground was constantly shaking because of the music, but it was obvious that Jianghu did not like to go there. The first floor was a bar. It was divided into 2 parts. The left part was a more traditional bar. The decoration was similar to Cowboy Song, but it was more luxurious. The tables and chairs were better. There were many people playing billiards, playing darts, and so on. The right part was also a bar, but it was a music bar. Unlike the disco below, it played some country music or some sailor music. Although the style was similar, the atmosphere was completely different. As for the top floor, there were some private rooms. According to AI Dehua's introduction to Jianghu, there were some people looking for special services in these private rooms. There were also some people who were there to gamble for small amounts of money and so on. Although Winthrop was not Las Vegas, it was impossible for all the people in the United States to go there if they wanted to play. Not to mention the money, it was not necessary to waste time. Today, AI Dehua took Jianghu to the music bar on the right. According to Jiang Dehue, most of the people who went to the left to play were young people, and in the eyes of this old man, young people were naturally not very reliable. As soon as he walked in, Jianghu felt a different style. As soon as he walked in, a special tune rushed into Jianghu's mind. Jianghu knew that this was some R&B, but he did not know the specific meaning. He was not a musician. Following the sound of the music, he saw a fat black woman who seemed to be about 200 pounds standing on the stage. She was wearing a shiny tight dress and there was a band behind her. Her curly and fluffy long hair was tied behind her head with a hairpin. Her whole head looked like a large pineapple. Jianghu, who originally thought that this sound was quite good, lost interest in an instant. But below the stage, there were many tall guys who were listening with great interest. "Boss, wait here first. I'll see if those old guys are here." Regardless of whether Jianghu was interested in listening or not, in AI Dehua's view, they came here not to listen to music but to recruit people. So he said something to Jianghu and walked into the crowd in the distance. As for Jianghu, he sat in front of the bar not far away and looked around. "Hello, what can I do for you?" At this moment, a blonde girl wearing a white shirt and a plaid skirt came over and asked Jianghu. Jianghu knew that this set of clothes was the standard clothes for the bartender here. No matter if it was a man or a woman, they had to wear it because it was said that the boss here, the military officer, was Scottish, so he usually wore it at home. Jianghu had reservations about men wearing skirts, but the girl was quite beautiful in it. The girl in front of him was a very beautiful girl. She was about 1.65 meters tall, with blonde hair, light blue eyes, and some small freckles on her white and tender skin. She looked really pure. "A glass of beer, thank you." Unfortunately, Jianghu was not a lecher. Naturally, he wouldn't say anything inexplicable. He just glanced at the price list on the bar and ordered a glass of beer. Hearing Jianghu's words, the girl went to the side, got a beer glass, and placed it in front of Jianghu. Jianghu took the beer and drank it. It was a German dark beer. The taste was a bit bitter, but the aftertaste was good. Although it was not as good as the ale brewed by Old Thor, it was still drinkable. "You look very unfamiliar. Is this your first time here?" The bar here was different from the underground bar on the other side. Most of the people in the bar here were middle-aged men in their 40s. They were different from the young people on the other side. There was an old saying in Wuxia, "No doubts at 40." It meant that men would no longer be confused after 40, although there was no such saying in the United States. However, men in the United States, at the age of 40, were basically married and had established a career. Moreover, those who could come here to drink were basically not lacking in money. Such people had strong self-control and were very stable. Now that Jianghu, a young man of 26 or 27 years old, had suddenly joined them, it really made the girl a little curious. Today's second update, continuously delivered. Chapter 117. "Ah, it's my first time here." Putting down the glass in his hand, Jianghu nodded to the girl with a smile. "Are you here to go to school?" "Which school?" Hearing Jianghu admit it, the girl also chuckled and asked. "Oh, no. Looking at my age, I don't look like someone who went to school. It's been a long time since I graduated. I bought a manor here and raised cows and fish." Hearing the girl's words, Jianghu explained. "Wow, I didn't expect you to be a capitalist." Hearing Jianghu's words, the girl's eyes narrowed and she said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jianghu also knew that she was joking, but it was the first time he was told this by someone else. Let's get to know each other. My name is Karma Cliff. I work here. I don't see many people of my age all year round. Looking at Jiang Hai's shy smile, the girl here took the initiative to reach out her hand, shook Jiang Hai's hand, and introduced herself. My name is Jiang Hai. If you have time in the future, you are welcome to come to my manor to play. Shaking the other party's soft little hand, Jiang Hai also said with a chuckle. Hearing his words, the girl in front of him showed a hint of surprise. Do you want to ask me out? Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai was embarrassed again. Well, he really doesn't know how to get in touch with girls, and to be honest, Jiang Hai was just being polite. Well, I'm just teasing you. It seems that you shouldn't come here often in the future. You should go to the left side to play. The pace here is too slow for you. It will make you stupid. Seeing Jiang Hai's wonderful expression, the girl here couldn't help but laugh. Hearing her hearty laughter, Jiang Hai also touched his nose and smiled a little awkwardly. Hey, Karma, give me a glass of whiskey. At this moment, a female voice suddenly came from the door, and then in Jiang Hai's sight, a woman dressed in a fairly urban style came in from the outside. This woman looks about the same age as Jiang Hai. She is also a white woman, very good-looking, with long straight blonde hair, wearing a white woman's suit. She looks well-behaved, but she gives people a different kind of aura. The woman said as she walked forward. Then she sat in a position separated from Jiang Hai. She supported her head with one hand as if she had a headache. Karma, who was chatting with Jiang Hai, couldn't help but frown after hearing the woman's words. He turned and walked back to the bar, but he didn't pour whiskey as the woman said. Instead, he poured a glass of milk and put it in front of the woman. When the woman looked up and saw the milk in front of her, she was stunned. I say, sister, in your current state, you still want to drink? Don't joke around, drink this glass of milk quickly, and then go back to sleep. Knocking on the bar in front of her, the girl said with a look of displeasure. It's not like I can't afford it, really. Hearing Karma's words, although the girl was a little upset, she didn't refute, but after whispering, she picked up the milk in front of her and drank it. Looking at the pair of sisters next to him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at them curiously. These two girls do look a little alike, but he has to admit that whether it is the elder sister or the younger sister, in Jiang Hai's aesthetic view, they are very beautiful women. You are. Probably feeling Jiang Hai's gaze, the elder sister, who was originally smiling bitterly, couldn't help but turn her head and make eye contact with Jiang Hai, she said strangely. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also a little embarrassed. It was really impolite to look at the other party so directly, so he smiled and nodded, then turned away. But unexpectedly, when this woman saw Jiang Hai, she stood up and walked directly to Jiang Hai and sat down, then she kept looking at Jiang Hai. Feeling her gaze, this time Jiang Hai was even more embarrassed. Have we met before? Looking at Jiang Hai, the elder sister asked strangely. I don't think so. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai didn't seem to have seen this woman, so he couldn't help but say weakly. Hey. It's rare, my elder sister actually took the initiative to hit on a boy. But elder sister, you are not being honest, this is the big capitalist that your younger sister took a fancy to, and there is a manor in his house. Hearing Jiang Hai's awkward words, and the elder sister's gaze, Karma over there couldn't help but run over with a smile, teasing Jiang Hai and her elder sister with a smile on her face. Manor? That's right, you really don't know me? My name is Sandy Clive, a teacher at Winthrop Town Elementary School. We have met in Boston. Hearing her sister's words, the girl here was more certain that she had met Jiang Hai, and immediately said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment, it seems that there is such a thing. It should be the first time he went to Boston to play. As a result, in the ship museum, he met this girl with some children. Later, in the dessert shop outside, he met this teacher again. It seems that she has some misunderstandings or something. In the end, if Delia George didn't pass by and help him explain it clearly, maybe he would have to explain it to the police. "Oh, I remember, it's you." Hearing Sandy's words, Jianghu immediately nodded and said, "Well, it's easy now that you remember. I remember you are also from Winthrop Town, and there is a manor. I don't know if I can visit it." Seeing that Jianghu remembered her, Clive also smiled, but then said. Hearing her words, Jianghu was confused. What's going on? A beautiful woman took the initiative to ask to go to his house. Is it because spring is coming, and the peach blossoms are about to bloom? Thinking of this, Jianghu said that he was a little confused. His first thought was, does this woman named Clive know that he is rich, so she has some ideas about him? If that was really the case, then it was better for him not to agree. What if she got a bag? What would he do then? But Jianghu can't refuse a beautiful woman like this. He just looked at this woman and was a little confused. Of course, little girl from the Clive family. But just as Jianghu was about to refuse, Edward Anderson's rough voice also came from behind. Jianghu looked back and found that behind him, there were several big men standing at this time. Compared with the cowboys found by Robbins, the people found by Ai Dehua seemed to be bigger. When they saw Jianghu looking at them, these people nodded their heads with good intentions. Uncle Anderson. Hearing Ai Dehua's words, Clive immediately spoke. Our boss's manor has always welcomed you, right, boss? Hearing the girl's words, Ai Dehua also smiled softly, then deliberately touched Jianghu with the tip of his elbow, indicating that he should agree first. Although he was a little confused, Jianghu still knew that Ai Dehua should not cheat him, so he first adjusted his mood, swallowed the words that he wanted to refuse, and then nodded to Clive in front of him. It's my honor. Hearing that Jianghu also agreed, Clive's face looked like she had completed a mission, and she was relieved in an instant. Then, she set a time with Jianghu. Since he has agreed to let her come, Jianghu doesn't care. Tomorrow, he may be a little busy, because if these fishermen pass the interview, he will come over tomorrow to sign the contract with them. But after the day after tomorrow, there is nothing to do. Hearing Jianghu say that the day after tomorrow, Clive was also very anxious, so she directly set a time for the day after tomorrow. At 10:00 in the morning, the day after tomorrow, she will visit Jianghu's manor. When Jianghu was still a little confused, she had already finished ordering, then she drank the milk and left quickly. As for Cliff next to her, she looked at her sister's appearance and was also a little worried. After apologizing to Jianghu, she went out to check on her sister's situation. After the little girl also left, only Ai Dehua, Jianghu, and the few people that Ai Dehua brought over were left in front of the bar. Taking advantage of this time, Jianghu also looked at the few people standing here. There were a total of 4 people standing in front of Jianghu. 4 of them were uncles, 2 were white, 1 was black, and the last one looked like a Latin American. The 4 of them were very strong. While Jianghu was looking at them, they were also looking at Jianghu. Boss, let me introduce you. This is Tommy Charles, the best sailor in Winthrop apart from me. I'm just kidding, but he is indeed a good sailor. When he was young, he worked at the Newfoundland fishery and held the record for catching the king of fish for 2 years. He once caught 16 bluefin tunas in George Shallow Bay in 2 months. He is quite famous there. This time, it was me who intercepted him. He was originally planning to work at the North Sea fishery in Europe. After Jianghu and everyone greeted each other with their eyes, Ai Dehua also introduced them. The first person he introduced was a white man. This white man looked to be around 45 or 46 years old. He was younger than Ai Dehua, but he was as big as him. He was 192 meters tall, and his body was particularly big. His skin was white with a hint of reddish black. This was because he often went out to sea and was exposed to the sun. The hair on his head was shaved clean, but he had a brown beard. He looked funny and scary. Compared to Ai Dehua, he was now in the peak state of being a fisherman. His physical fitness was above average, and his experience had reached the limit. He was in the best state of being a fisherman. After hearing Ai Dehua's introduction, he immediately reached out his hand to Jianghu. He shook hands with Jianghu and said, "Nice to meet you." Jianghu also shook hands with him. After seeing the two get to know each other, Ai Dehua continued to introduce him. Today's second update should be back on Monday. Let's stop here first. Please support Xiao Fei. Thank you. Chapter 118. This is Eleanor Moses, a legendary sailor in the Gulf of Mexico. He once went into the sea alone to catch a tiger shark. He was known as the Black Conqueror. After introducing Tommy Charles, Edward Anderson introduced the middle-aged black man next to him. This black man looks to be about 50 years old. Although there are no wrinkles on his face, most of the thin curly hair on his scalp has turned white. Compared to the talkative Philip in Jianghu's manner, this man is much more serious. When he heard Ai Dehua's introduction, he also stretched out his hand. "Don't listen to him, I was just unlucky. My spear pierced into the body of a tiger shark. As a result, that guy carried me for 50 nautical miles, but fortunately, I won in the end." While shaking hands with Jianghu, Eleanor Moses said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jianghu also smiled. "In any case, this guy caught a tiger shark. This is Andrew Christian, our Captain Jack." Hearing Eleanor's words, Ai Dehua didn't care. He smiled and patted the middle-aged Latino man next to him. "Hello, my name is Andrew Christian Lima, you can call me Andrew." Hearing Ai Dehua's words, the middle-aged Latino man smiled and said to Jianghu. According to Ai Dehua, this man is called Andrew Christian. Well, Jianghu was too lazy to say the rest of his name. Anyway, this man used to work in the Peruvian fishery in Peru a long time ago. He had quite good skills, and it was said that he also owned a boat. Later, it was said that he went to the Caribbean Sea to make a lot of money and immigrated to the United States. So many people call him the Lucky Captain Jack. Later, in 2000, because of poor investment, he went bankrupt. Then he went to California, the North Sea fishery, and the Newfoundland fishery. But since there was no fish in Newfoundland, he settled down in Boston by accident. His main income is catching tuna or lobsters every year. Latin Americans were also very hard-working, so although his income was unstable and he could not make much money, he was still able to survive. But this time, when he heard that Jianghu wanted to recruit a permanent member, he still came. And because Ai Dehua's skills were very good, he also agreed to let him try. For this opportunity, he must seize it. Ai Dehua, the last one, is called Marlon Rupert. He was my colleague in California for 3 years. There is no problem with his skills. Most importantly, he can fly all the boats and planes. Ai Dehua finally introduced a white uncle, but this uncle's height was the shortest among all the people here, only about 1.8 meters. Even Jianghu was a lot taller than him. At the same time, although his body was very strong, compared to the others, he was thinner. Originally, Jianghu was still wondering if this uncle joined because of his strong skills. Now, after listening to Ai Dehua, he understood that this uncle knew how to fly a plane. As a fisherman, it was not a big deal to know how to sail a boat. To be honest, among the 6 crew members that Jianghu met, except for Philip, who did not know how to sail a boat, the others knew how to sail a boat. Tommy and Eleanor were good at it, and Andrew started his career as a captain. But when it came to flying a plane, it seemed that only Marlon Rupert knew how to do it. Jianghu had studied it when he came back today. His current stall was not small. It was time to buy an airplane. Of course, for the time being, he did not need to think about luxury airliners and the like. However, an agricultural plane and a helicopter were still very much needed. But there was a problem. Even if he had these things, no one would know how to fly them. Jianghu asked Belle that night. It was obvious that Bell, a special forces soldier, had not been taught how to fly an agricultural plane before, so he only had a license to fly a helicopter. He did not have an agricultural plane either. Now that he had recruited Marlon, he could use him as a driver. Hello. Thinking of this, Jianghu immediately shook hands with Marlon. After the few of them got to know each other, they went to find a round table and sat down. They began to talk about recruiting them to Jianghu's manor. To be honest, I pay Uncle Ai Dehua a fixed salary of $1,200 per week, and if there are abundant fish at sea, there will naturally be rewards. Today, he just received a reward of $10,000, so I won't treat you badly. You've just come to my manor, so I'll first talk about the issues of money and treatment. As for money, since you're new here, I'll temporarily set it at $1,000 per week. My manor has a small standalone villa for you to live in. You'll have to pay for the monthly water, electricity, and gas costs. I'll pay for the internet, I'll pay for the accommodation, I'll pay for the food, and I'll make sure there's enough beef and fish every day. As for vegetables, it depends on the season and the output of our manor itself. Jianghu slowly explained as he looked at the people in front of him. Business was business. Now that he wanted to hire these people and not just ask them to come over for help, he naturally had to make things clear. After hearing that Jianghu would give them a weekly salary of $1,000 per week, the eyes of 2 of the 4 people sitting there immediately lit up. They were instantly eager to give it a try. These 2 people were none other than Eleanor Cece and Andrew Christian. Although the United States did not allow racial discrimination on the surface, it was actually everywhere. It was always easier for white people to find jobs, while it was more difficult for other people of color to find jobs. Even if they did find jobs, their wages were lower than white people's. Eleanor Cece and Andrew Christian's situation was similar. These 2 people's standard was no worse than any white sailors, but they always received the least money, especially Andrew Christian. His life was more miserable, so to Tommy and Marlon, a weekly salary of $1,000 was not bad. It was enough to tempt them. They already couldn't wait to join Jianghu's manor. That's the main thing. If you're willing, you can go back tonight and prepare. I'll come back tomorrow morning. After signing the contract, you can move into my manor. Looking at the people in front of him, Jianghu explained the basic terms of the contract to them. Then he looked at the people in front of him and said, I'm very willing, and I have no problem with that. As soon as Jianghu's voice fell, Andrew and Eleanor expressed their willingness to go. For them, a stable income of $52,000 a year was quite a wonderful thing. Most importantly, if they went fishing and caught something, they would be given a bonus. They didn't think too much about the bonus. $20,000 a year was enough. $70,000 a year was enough to wake them up laughing in their dreams. I don't have any other questions. Is there a fixed percentage of the bonus? After hesitating for a while, Tommy Charles thought about it and said to Jianghu. He was more concerned about this. Basically, it won't exceed 5% of each harvest. Of course, if there are unexpected gains, it'll be calculated separately. But as long as you don't lose money, I'll still give you the bonus. But there's no way to fix it, it mainly depends on my mood. Hearing Tommy Charles's words, Jianghu shrugged. He knew that the employment situation in the United States wasn't very optimistic. Basically, many people couldn't find a job in the United States. For example, this Tommy Charles. If it weren't for Jianghu's recruitment, he might have gone to Europe. So Jianghu didn't paint too big a picture for them. He just said very calmly, I'm in. Before Tommy Charles could make his stance clear, Marlon Rupert spoke up. Then I'll join too. Congratulations, boss, you've gained the loyalty of 4 good men. Seeing that Marlon Rupert had agreed, Tommy Charles couldn't say anything else. To be honest, he had only hesitated for a moment. The salary offered by the North Sea was €900 per week, which was equivalent to $988 per week. Most importantly, the prospect of leaving home aside, there was no clear indication of the bonus. At the same time, it was an ocean-going fishing boat. One would have to stay on the boat for a few months. For a few months, it was good enough to have instant noodles to eat, let alone beef. There was no way to eat beef. So in general, Jianghai's job was much better than in Europe. Originally, before Marin Rupert agreed, he wanted to see if he could add more. Now that Marin Rupert had agreed, what else could he say? Naturally, he agreed immediately. Jianghai naturally knew what he was thinking. He didn't need a few $100s. But he didn't like his subordinates hiding things from him, so when he saw that Tommy Charles understood so quickly, he chuckled. It was good that he understood. If he hesitated again, or said that he would tell Jianghai the next day, Jianghai might not want him anymore. At worst, he could recruit again. With the current employment situation in the United States, other things were hard to find, but there were plenty of people. Since everyone has agreed, I think you can go back and pack up. Those with families can also bring them to live in the manor. This is also a benefit. The meat and fish they eat will be provided by me for free. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, in front of the Winthrop law firm. Now that everything had been booked, Jianghai chatted with them for a while. At around 8 p.m., Jianghai left. Of course, before leaving, he also paid the bill. Now that he was a boss who didn't lack money, it didn't matter if his subordinates paid for their drinks. After Jianghai left, Ai Dehua naturally had to leave as well. After the two left the bar, Jianghai didn't go to sleep in the back seat this time. Instead, he sat in the front passenger seat because he had something to say to Ai Dehua. Of course, it wasn't about the 4 new crew members. To be honest, Jianghai was very satisfied with the 4 people. What he didn't understand was why Ai Dehua agreed to let Sandy come to his house. Today's update, I only came back last night. Looking at the book review section, it seems like I did not post the wrong chapter. Let me explain about the pond in the book review section. Xiao Fei also knew that tuna were the same as some sharks. They could not stop swimming. Once they stopped swimming, they would die. Therefore, they could not be placed in the reservoir. Generally speaking, when such fish were caught, they would be killed directly and sold as ice. Originally, Xiao Fei also thought the same. But a few days ago, Xiao Fei bought a book about marine fish. Because tuna were very precious, some non-ocean-going fishing boats were designed to open up the 2 sides of the ship. When the ship sailed, the ocean water would flow in from the front and out from the back. This way, there would be a flow of water in the tank of the ship. The fish stored in the tank would need to constantly swim in order to not be washed away by the current. This way, the fish that needed to swim could be raised for a short period of time. However, this time was very short, at most 1 or 2 hours. Moreover, the cost was very high. Because the ship needed to be split into 2 halves, the hardness of the hull would be affected. These were all problems that ocean-going fishing boats couldn't do. Xiao Fei didn't write these things in the chapter. If there was any doubt, Xiao Fei would explain it to everyone. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.